Прийшли окупанти до нас в Україну, форма новенька, воєнні машини та трохи поплавився їх інвентар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російські танкісти сховались в кущі, щоб лаптем посьорбати довбані щі, та трохи у чах перегрівся навар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Приперли зі сходу до нас барани для восстановлення
великої страни.
Найкращий пастух баранячих отар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Їх доводи всяке озброєння різне, потужні ракети, машини залізні, у нас на всі доводи є коментар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Вони захопити хотіли нас зразу, а ми зачаїли на орків образу з російських бандитів, робить примар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Російська поліція справи заводить, там пивцю рашистів ніяк не знаходить, хто винен, що в нашому полі глухар. Байрактар, Байрактар. Веде пропаганду кремлівський урод, слова пропаганди ковтає народ, тепер нове слово знає цар.
Байрактар.
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 Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.
Наші
Hello, everyone. I'm the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 794 of the news, and it's good to see you all once again. And tonight, we're learning that Crimea is under siege. Ukraine is lashing out, and it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 48 hours of the news of the war in Ukraine, and we're also going to be covering the major events that have happened inside of Crimea and also inside of Russian territory, as the Ukrainians are now lashing out everywhere they can, and they are hitting their targets dead on the nail everywhere that we've seen. And not only that, we also have a special treat from inside of Ukraine as the first ever propeller-on-propeller aircraft dogfight since World War II happened over the skies of Odessa just today. There is a load of insane stuff that has been happening over the past 48 hours, and really quickly, I would like to say that if you were looking for a live stream last night and you were not able to find our live stream, that is because one did not run last night. Simply because we didn't get enough news. If you see all of these markers here in the olive color that I'm moving my cursor over here on the left side of the screen, that was all the news I was able to get for a 24-hour span on Ukraine. This, as you see here in green, is our usual span of news. There was almost no news that we could actually cover that I could find, and so we decided not to cover it and amalgamate yesterday and today into one big stream and then cover all the news that we got, on both of those days. But a lot actually happened today, an unbelievable amount did. So, moving on from that, and that explanation as to why y'all may have not been able to find our stream last night, we are now going to be moving on down into our first major news of the day, as we were able to see that in the major town of Slavyansk-Na-Kubani, on the highway in between Krasnodar and the Kerch Bridge, and not only that, home to a major Russian oil refinery that had already been hit a little while ago, and kind of knocked out a little bit. From what we understand in the after-action report, the damage that was caused to the Slavyansk-Na-Kubani oil refinery was actually minor. It apparently knocked out the refinery for several days, but the Russians were able to get it back up and running as the drone apparently hit another part of the refinery that it could actually be shut down and have most of the process diverted to another part of the refinery without much issue being caused, rather than a slightly decreased amount of production. That was not the case today, as the Ukrainians ended up sending another drone wave towards Slavyansk-Na-Kubani, ended up hitting the refinery again, and this time, from what we understand, the damage is serious enough that they were actually able to knock the refinery out. Here are the three clips that we got, starting with our first one right here, of the kind of fire that you got to see coming from Slavyansk. As we can see, the morning's glow is coming early to Slavyansk-Na-Kubani here in this clip, but here it is. And there was the explosion. And the Slavyansk-Na-Kubani...
It's like a Chernobyl-style explosion out in the distance. Like when they looked out of that apartment window and they saw Chernobyl going up in the blaze, it's like that kind of explosion.
Man, you'd know because you spent last night watching Chernobyl, didn't you?
I did. It's a good miniseries. I had to rewatch it for the third time. I'm sort of like minded that way, and that kind of like dark mindset. I had to watch that dark show one more time.
Man, but it was a really good show, and it does look a lot like that. But that massive fire is oil, most likely raw oil, spewing out of the refinery or some kind of refined fuel product where it's been, well, the pipes it was traveling through has been ruptured, and it's immediately turning into a massive fireball and an explosion at Slavyansk-Na-Kubani. Moving on from that, here is another clip that we got of the explosion that happened not too long ago. Oh, there was a little boom right there, and it looks like it got hit. We can also see a fire that's happening right there as well, but that's more of the sideshow compared to the explosion that actually just happened on screen. That thing is roasting, good googly moogly, that thing is juicy. And moving on from that into our last clip, we were also able to see a fire at the refinery from another angle, this time from the highway.
That's the Cookie Monster.
What? Yeah, where the hell did the Cookie Monster come from? Just out of the blue, you hear it blows up.
It really is the Cookie Monster.
Oh my god.
I got an explosion.
Dude, the explosion hadn't even happened yet. This guy's only got like a sixth sense. He's looking into the pitch darkness of the night, and out of the blue he just goes, and it blows up. It's like, how did he do that? Look at this.
He saw the flash, and then you heard the sound, I think, after it.
Maybe. But the thing is that he said this before the Flash even. Watch. And then there's the Flash. He said it before it even blew up. How did he know? Like, dude, he is the Russian partisan that called in the coordinates to this refinery right here. Dude, the Ukrainian said, "Can you give us the coordinates to the refinery?" And he went, and they said, "Oh, thank you, thank you." And then they went and bombed the place. But still, pretty nice, successful hit. That's the end of that clip, but from what we understand, the Slavyansk-Na-Kubani oil refinery has been hit again, a second time over the span of 2 months. This time, the damage appears to be a little bit more serious due to the fireball that we were able to see in the first clip, and we believe that a critical structure within the refinery that allows it to be able to process and refine crude oil into refined fuel products has most likely been knocked out of operation as of today. This once again means that the refinery is not going to be able to produce oil for the Russian public or the Russian war effort, and this once again means that the Russians are probably down and out for the count, at least in Slavyansk-Na-Kubani. Meanwhile, we did see that in other areas of Russia, they were trying their best to mitigate the damage that Ukrainian drone attacks can cause. Many of y'all know that the Russians have this thing called the cope cage. And if I type this in online, I'll see what we can find, the cope cage. If we type that in, we can see that the cope cage actually brings up slat armor as the answer on the internet. And moving on into Wikipedia really quickly, many of y'all will know, and let me see if I can show this here. Let's see. It's showing slat armor that's done right. This is a Russian equivalent of slat armor, or as we call it, the cope cage, where they put a large part, or a large piece of slat armor above the turret. Nowadays, it's almost all-encompassing. It actually covers the entire tank. But this is what they use on vehicles that are involved in the war. And a lot of people know that it's a joke. It hardly is effective most times, and usually the vehicles that are carrying these cope cages end up still getting destroyed. But cope cages have absolutely encapsulated the mind of the Russian public, and not only that, the minds of Russian businessmen who own the oil refineries and oil silos of the Russian Federation. And they went, if cope cages can do that little for the Russian army, what can they do for us? And so they ended up, I'm not even kidding, building cope cages around oil silos. Here is a picture of the quick cope cages that they've set up around them. It's a joke.
I saw this earlier today, and I was looking at it thinking it looks like they put up some makeshift scaffolding or something, and they were hoping that would hold stuff off. But I don't think this is going to hold off any drones that are of the small variety. I think this will probably just hold off the larger ones.
I don't think this is going to hold off anything, Matthew, because if you notice, there's no covering for the roof. It's just a cylinder around the silo. So you just kind of fly the drone up and then dive it down onto the top, and it's still going to get it. This really does nothing to protect the silos at all, rather than an attack coming in on the direct side of them. So, is this a complete waste of materials? In my opinion, oh, absolutely. Would this ever work? Most likely not. And on top of that, the Ukrainians are very ingenuitive. If they see this scaffold here, what they most likely do is they most likely make a drone that runs into the scaffold and then flings a bomb pretty much through the scaffold onto the silo, and then it explodes there. There is a way to work around this, most likely just diving straight in on the silo from the roof. But it still shows the Russians really don't have a lot in air defense, because we did hear a while ago that the Russian government said they were going to protect the oil refineries and silos with air defense, that they would move from the front lines. And that apparently has never happened, because once again, we then heard right after that the Russian government then said, actually, scratched it, you're all on your own. And then the Russian businesses that are now all on their own went, well, if we're on our own, we're going to just set up cope cages. I don't think cope cages will ever work. In all practicality, they don't even work on the armored vehicles in Ukraine. Why in the world would they work for a thinly covered silo that houses a flammable liquid? I just don't think this is going to work. But still, showing how desperate
this is literally like someone told Comrade Blyatov to go out there and find a way to protect the storage tanks, and he said, "Oh, Blyat, we have no way to defend it," because they know they have to get air defense out here to properly defend these facilities. Like, this is not going to cut it. But this was their lame attempt to say we did something, but it's not really going to help, like you said.
I would say, I would have to say it's probably not going to help at all. I mean, this is probably something they did just to feel good, maybe so that way they could claim for insurance reasons, literally, that they tried their best to defend it or something. I have no idea. I have absolutely no clue why they would think this is even effective. I have a feeling it won't be, and I have a feeling we'll find that out very, very soon. But moving on from that, we do have to move y'all out of Russia for a brief moment, because while the Ukrainians have been hitting oil refineries and oil silos throughout Russia, they also hit something that was really interesting in Moscow. I'm going to show y'all this clip. And we're going to get rid of the ultra op music, the operator music. These are KA-32s, which are based off of the Kamarov 29, and we can actually see that a small little fire has been started in one of them. Now, this is being filmed by what we are hearing as Ukrainian operatives that have moved onto an airfield near Moscow and have ended up setting fire to these KA-32s and destroying them. This is fairly new. And we can see that fire is really starting to spread. Oh, well, there's a smoke plume right there that we can visibly see. And that means, in the end of it, we heard that several KA-32s, we don't know an exact number, but several of them were destroyed at an airfield in the Moscow area. That is pretty impressive that they were able to get on the airfield in the first place, and not only that, cause enough damage that they actually ended up destroying several KA-32s, but still, we love to see it, we love to hear it, and not only that, let me show y'all what a KA-32 is. Let me see here. Let's see. Modifications. Let me go down to the modifications. So here we go. The KA-32, as pictured here, is what got caught on fire and burned down. They're incredibly
It's like
ugly.
Guppy.
It's le guppy. It's guppy bliet guppy. That's what it is. It's bliet guppy bliet. But beyond that, it is a multi-rotor helicopter that was originally designed as the KA-29 for the Soviet Navy, but it ended up getting into some civilian roles. This was one of them, and several of these ended up catching on fire and burning at that Russian airport. We love to hear it, and we love to smell the wonderful smells of oil and fuels burning inside of these KA-32s. But moving on from that and on into our next bit of news, I have to take y'all to something that was incredibly shocking to hear out of Odessa before I move y'all into the big news that we got out of northern Crimea just a second ago. The Russians sent an Orlan-10 recon drone over the city of Odessa today to try and conduct further reconnaissance, most likely for future Russian strikes that'll be occurring on the city of Odessa, as Odessa is the largest operational port in Ukraine at the moment, and it's also where a lot of Ukrainian grains and also other goods are still shipped in and out of the country from. For that reason, Odessa has been a major target of Russian missile and drone attacks, and it appears that the Russians today were trying to find out a little bit more information about what was in the area and what could possibly be stricken next in a future attack, or at least targeted, although sometimes they rarely ever end up striking their targets. So, an Orlan-10, which is a small drone that has a camera mounted on the bottom of it, ended up taking off today and flying off into the area of Odessa. This is an Orlan-10. It uses a two-stroke, really remote-controlled airplane motor, and not only that, it has a nice Nikon camera mounted underneath, right here, right where that little bay is, so that way they can see all the sights and sounds of the world below them and try and get a little bit more information about it. Apparently, this was picked up by Ukrainian air defense or some other kind of a radar in the area, and something that you would never believe came out to shoot this thing down and ended up shooting it down. Matthew, I don't know if you've heard this story today, but an Orlan-10 was shot down in a dogfight over the skies of Odessa by a Yak-52.
Yes, I heard about this. I saw the thing circling around. I didn't get to see it shoot it down. I don't think there's footage of that, but I did hear about it.
This was an insane story. So to guide you through it, because I couldn't find the footage either of it actually firing its machine guns, but from what we heard, a machine gun mounted onto this Yak-52, which is an older Soviet-era training aircraft from about the mid-70s, ended up flying towards the Orlan, fired a machine gun at it, and ended up taking the Orlan-10 down. It is the first time that a propeller-on-propeller dogfight has been seen in Europe since World War II. I'm not even kidding. It's absolutely insane. So I'm going to be showing y'all really quickly the few videos that we got One from inside of the from inside the Yak-52 as they circle the Orlan 10 that they just shot down, and a couple of other clips that we were also able to get from this absolute freakish dogfight that happened today over the skies of Odessa. So here's the first clip from inside the Yak-52. We see them circling, and we can see the parachute of the Orlan 10 right there, and some of Odessa below. But this thing legitimately shot down a drone. I mean, it's insane to think about, because a Yak-52 is not a great plane. I'll be going over its stats in a minute, but here's another clip of the Yak-52 circling the Orlan after it shot it down. You can see it flying around it right there.
Is that thing built to be a combat aircraft, or is that just a civilian, like, single prop?
It's a military trainer, but I'll be getting into that in a second, because the whole thing is wild, how this even happened or why it happened or anything like that. But here's another clip of that Yak-52 flying around up there.
Also, by the way, this thing didn't just take down the Orlan, by the way. You also heard it took down a Zala as well, I was told.
I didn't hear about that. That's news.
Yeah, it took down the Zala too, which is sort of like not really a Shahed style, but it's like a reversed Shahed, something like that. See, it's right there. It says Zala in this post.
Man, I never really heard much about the Zalas. I know that we've seen them maybe like once or twice, but they're fairly rare. So I don't really know a lot about them. But beyond that, this was an insane deal. I hope, because we do see that there was a camera inside the Yak-52, I hope that we get some camera footage of them actually shooting down the Orlan, because the Yak-52 is not that impressive of an aircraft. This thing was introduced into service as a Soviet trainer aircraft in 1979. Its first flight was in 1976, meaning that, funnily enough, this thing is actually newer than the F-15 in reality, which is really weird to think about, but nevertheless, it kind of gives you an idea of how backwards the Soviet Union was. Beyond that, however, the Yak-52 does not have that high of an airspeed, and I'll show you all this really quickly. The maximum speed of the Yak-52 is 177 miles per hour. Its cruise speed is around 120 miles per hour, meaning that it's about the same speed as a Cessna 172. It has a service ceiling of a mere 13,000 feet and a range of about 340 miles. It has absolutely no offensive armament to speak of, because it wasn't really designed to have an offensive armament, although you can outfit offensive armament onto it. This one right here actually had two S-8 rocket pods, I believe, mounted onto it. So you can mount weapons onto it. It's just that it's fairly rare to do such a thing. And also, I have not seen one in all the research I did today that actually had machine guns mounted onto it for one reason or another. So from what we know, it's a fairly interesting invention to put machine guns on a Yak-52 and pretty much use it as a light dogfighter. But I guess you could say that the Yak went up there and yakety-yacked, and the Orlan did not come back. It's something that it's absolutely crazy. And look at this, they already updated. It's crazy how quick Wikipedia actually is sometimes, because under the Ukraine section, it says, used at least one case by Ukrainian armed forces during the Russian invasion of Ukraine to shoot down a Russian recon drone.
That's crazy. And it's like a Snoopy-style aircraft shooting down a modern, like, reconnaissance drone. It's kind of wild.
Dude, this thing actually looks stupid, I'm not gonna lie. It looks like one of the dumbest trainer planes I've ever seen. Like the A6 Texan, which is our version of a propeller trainer from about the same time. Well, actually, let me make sure. It's this one, actually, the Texan 2. One second, let me go get the Texan 2 really quickly, because this is the one, it's not really comparable in time frame, but it's close enough. This is the Texan 2, which is used a good bit for training here in the States. And this is what we use for training, and this is what the Soviet Union and the modern-day Russians use for training. So you can see the kind of technological gap that exists in between the two. But still, this is crazy. I mean, legitimately insane. We don't even know how they really did it. Hopefully more information will be coming out. But a real dogfight, the first one in the world since, hell, World War II, happened over the skies of Ukraine, and the Ukrainians ended up winning it, technically. So that is pretty wild, pretty impressive, and I have a feeling that videos will be made about this here in the near future, about how wild of a feat that was. But moving on from that, we do have to talk a little bit about the Russians and those oil refineries that they had getting hit, because while the Ukrainian air defense is adding anything and everything they can, including light training aircraft to shoot down incoming air targets, the fact of the matter is that we've seen that the Russians have almost next to no anti-aircraft defense inside of the whole of the Russian Federation. The Ukrainian drones are easily able to access and destroy Russian oil refinery sites and Russian critical infrastructure whenever the need arises and whenever an attack is conducted. It seems as though it is very rare that any of these attacks are ever thwarted or stopped by the Russians. And it's bringing up the question of, do the Russians really have the ability to defend themselves from incoming air attacks, considering the vastness of the Russian Federation, and not only that, the amount of successes that the Ukrainians have had trying to strike these refineries. And Matthew, what are you thinking about that, and what is everyone else thinking about that as well?
Okay, so we asked the audience the question. We said, now that Ukraine has hit 3 more major Russian refineries last night, partially disabling all 3 of them, is Russia unable to defend these facilities? And 63% said Russia really cannot defend them. 22% said Russia will try to defend, but they're going to fail. And 8% said no, Russia will adapt to defend over time. And these attacks on the Russian oil refineries, they've been happening actually for weeks. And Russia had actually stated they're going to try to move air defense next to these facilities, but we're not seeing that happen. That was a bluff by Russia, I guess, to try to throw Ukraine off and make them think that they're going to try to address the problem. But all we're seeing is the Russians start building cope cages around the storage tanks, and that is it. So I'm pretty confident that Russia has no ability to defend these facilities, and the fact that all 3 of those facilities were attacked and partially disabled last night, that is truly a testament to Russia's inability to defend those plants. And I don't think there's anything they can do in the future either to actually find air defense, because Russia is also kind of hurting for equipment as well right now. Actually, not kind of, they are definitely hurting for equipment, and they're going to get even worse in a shortage over the many more months to come. So I'm with the 63%, but Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I don't think they have any proper air defense to deal with problems inside of Russia at the moment. They have enough to secure the Moscow defense perimeter. They have enough to secure a defense perimeter around Putin's mansion as well, in the area around Sochi, although that one's fairly light from what we understand. And beyond that, the rest of their air defense systems are in Ukraine at the moment, or they've been destroyed during the war. So going off of that, I would have to say they really cannot defend critical infrastructure inside of Russia. So as long as the Ukrainians are able to defend their critical infrastructure, they are going to have the upper hand on the Russians until the end of the war, meaning that they'll be able to conduct strikes whenever they need, wherever they need, and most likely cause the maximum amount of damage that they possibly can, while not really dealing with a lot of damage thrown back at them by the Russians in return, especially considering the amount of support that Ukraine is going to be getting over these next few weeks from the United States. There is no way in hell that the Russians will be able to get through the air defense perimeter that Ukraine will have here within the next 2 to 3 weeks. And on top of that, the Ukrainians are also going to have a higher amount of air support, as they are getting 30 F-16s, most likely by mid to late May. And not only that, they're going to have a large amount of air-to-air and air-to-ground weaponry to try and deal with surface-to-air missile systems that are currently inside of occupied Ukraine, and also incoming air targets such as missiles and drones that are targeting sites inside of Ukraine as well. So we have a feeling that the Ukrainians are going to be way above the Russians as far as air defense is concerned. But to answer the question at hand, I just don't think the Russians will ever be able to get a proper or a sufficient amount of air defense to protect all vital assets inside of the Russian Federation. But moving on from that and into our next bit of news, we also got the offhand report, which we are still trying to confirm as the stream is live right now, that a report of an ATACMS attack has happened inside of northern Crimea, and according to Russian sources, they are claiming that a Ukrainian attack tonight on northern Crimea was conducted utilizing the long-range variant of the MGM-140 ATACMS missiles, which were secretly transferred to Ukraine recently by the United States. They say that all the missiles were shot down by air defense, but we all know that that's most likely not true, and we'll be looking for video and picture evidence of the strikes by these ATACMS. But the fact that the Russians have not been able to shoot down anything that's been fired into Crimea before, even striking inside of the Black Sea Fleet, the harbor itself in Sevastopol, I'm highly doubting that they shot down the ATACMS. I'm incredibly doubting it, as a matter of fact. I would say that that is as unlikely as the Russians winning the war, which is very unlikely at this point. But moving on from that news inside the area of northern Crimea, we are now going to be moving on into the area of Bashtanka, where we were also able to see a very nice picture of a Ukrainian MiG-29 on patrol. Look at it. And with the nice morning sky, flying directly into the sun so that you can be blinded by the sun's beautiful light and brilliance. But beyond that, it's a beautiful
So
picture.
who took the picture? Way, like, was it another jet with a photographer in it or something?
Minecraft creative mode. But
There you go.
it was another aircraft that took the picture. But still, it's a really nice one, and it's nice to see the Ukrainian Air Force on patrol in the area. It's apparently on a combat air patrol, meaning that it's outfitted in an air-to-air role to fight any incoming air targets such as drones or maybe even other Russian aircraft. Although Russian aircraft crossing over the line and moving into Ukraine is unheard of at this point in the war, and most likely will never happen due to the increasing strength of air defense on the ground on the Ukrainian side. But nevertheless, it is showing us that the Ukrainians are really starting to try and prioritize their air defense as best as they possibly can, and it looks as though they are going to be eking out an upper hand advantage on the Russians going on into these next few days and weeks, really for the remainder of the war for the most part, because they have really been able to do quite well. And not only that, we're seeing that their deep strikes into Russia, due to their lack of air defense, are also starting to get a large amount of results. And they're certainly starting to show that the Russians will most likely not have a good ability to defend themselves against these incoming strikes, especially considering that we're now getting the rumored report that an ATACMS missile attack has occurred on northern Crimea. And a lot of people have been talking about that attack in particular and what they're thinking about it, especially considering that the Ukrainians are going to be getting a large flow of these missiles heading into their territory from the United States, and they'll be able to use them. A lot of people have been wondering whether those attacks will increase or not. A lot of people are believing that they certainly will, and that the Ukrainians are going to start using ATACMS like their party favors, passing them around to every single Russian command headquarters within occupied Ukraine, inside of Crimea as well, and not only that, targeting air bases and major supply hubs that are behind the front lines. Not only that, the ATACMS might even be able to attack the larger air defense batteries, such as the S-300s and S-400s, that are way far behind the lines in places like Crimea, knocking out that air defense and allowing for Ukraine to conduct even larger strikes on the Russian ground and naval forces, as well as the air forces that are inside of those regions. But a lot of people have been talking about this. And Matthew, what do you think about the chances of further ATACMS attacks? That's a really weird thing to say. It's almost like a tongue twister. But what do you think about further ATACMS attacks, and what is everyone else thinking? Do they think it's highly likely or not so much?
All right, and on this one, we asked the audience the question. We said Ukraine has launched a major attack on Crimea using the new long-range ATACMS, and what are your thoughts? And an overwhelming 89% said these attacks will increase now, and it looks like only 2% said it's a one-off attack, and only 3% said probably will increase, but it's really not effective. And you'll notice that today, after that attack allegedly occurred, the Russians came out on their propaganda channels and immediately started saying how they shot all the long-range ATACMS down, and the ATACMS are effectively useless, according to the Russian propagandists. And that is complete load of bollocks. That is a load of bollocks all the way through. The long-range ATACMS are effective. And I think tomorrow, when more video evidence and also picture evidence comes out of these attacks, which happened, I think, only a few hours ago, so we don't have any photo evidence just yet, I think we're going to see they're very effective, and the Russians really don't have a way to defend against that either. And I think these attacks will increase now that Ukraine's stockpiles of these weaponry have been increased dramatically. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that the chances of an ATACMS missile being shot down by the Russians is highly unlikely. Let's consider some of the things that the Russians have not shot down that have made it to their target. First off is the A-22 light sport plane that flew 725 miles into Russia and hit the town of Naberezhny Chelny and didn't get shot down a single step of the way. Another one would be the Storm Shadow and the Scalp EG missiles, which are technically stealth or low visibility missiles, but nevertheless, neither of those were ever shot down as well. Not only that, we also know that any other missiles, such as the normal HIMARS M39 and M40 missiles that have a range of 50 miles, have never been shot down by air defense as well by the Russians. We've never seen that happen either. We've never seen really anything get shot down by the Russians. Even Ukrainian naval drones seem to mostly get through to their targets once they're set out on their way. We see very few of those getting destroyed as well, and those might even be in reality some of the easiest to destroy, considering that they're moving across a two-dimensional plane, really, and it's going to be quite easy to lead the target and destroy it, and even then, that's quite difficult for the Russians to do. Going off of all of that, I would have to say the chance of them shooting down those ATACMS is next to none, and I have a feeling that they're trying to beat the big news that will be coming out in the future of ATACMS strikes and wiping out Russian bases one after the other, and they're trying to do the same thing they did with the Abrams, because many of y'all will remember that the United States announced a good while ago that we were going to provide Ukraine with the M1A1 Abrams, and in response to that, immediately, really within 2 or 3 days, the Russians had already claimed that they had destroyed an Abrams on the battlefield and that the Abrams was an outdated and useless tank. Many of y'all will remember that, and it's something that the Russians have been doing the entirety of the war. They have always been saying that HIMARS have been destroyed. Only one of them, from what we can confirm, has actually been destroyed. The other 19 of them are still operational, and that first HIMARS to be destroyed was destroyed about 3 weeks ago, meaning that they were in Ukraine for nearly a year and a half without even being touched. But that entire time, the Russians had claimed that they destroyed HIMARS, multiples of them. They've also claimed the same thing about the Bradley before the Bradley was even in Ukraine, the Abrams as well. They also claimed the same thing about the M777 and many other kinds of systems that the United States has provided. So I have a feeling that they never shot down the ATACMS. They probably also didn't even see an ATACMS, in all honesty, because we're not getting any reports from the ground of strikes inside of northern Crimea. So in my honest opinion, I would have to say that they're probably never going to shoot one of those down, and the attacks are certainly going to be ramping up once they start to get a large supply of ATACMS to fire from the M240s and also the let me think, what is the name? Let's see, it's the M240, and then there is the M490 or something like that. Let me make sure to go check this, because I got to make sure, the M270, the M240 and the M270. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, it is now time for us to move on into a little bit more news, because there's still more to cover. For example, did y'all know, interesting fact, let me make sure that we're getting this right. Interesting fact, if you go down into the area around Mykolaiv, or really just anywhere near the sea, you get to see that the 36 Marines are still training for river crossings across the Dnipro River. They're conducting this training, of course, to make sure that their forces on the other side that are still holding Kazachi, Lahari, and Krinky are ready to try and move across the river as fast as they possibly can and prepare to defend those villages and also build up the forces inside of them, which is a very important thing for Ukrainian forces to get down and make sure that they rehearse over and over and over, is how quickly they can move these boats, offload the troops, and get them back to the other side of the river. This will greatly reduce casualties, as Russian drone patrols are always active in these areas and are ready to try and destroy any boats that are moving along the Dnipro River that they see. So really cool training, and very important and pertinent training for the kind of theater of combat that the 36th Marine Brigade finds themselves in near the Dnipro River region. Moving on from that and up into some other news, we were able to see that the air defense report came out today showing that the Ukrainians have been fairly successful overnight. They destroyed 6 calibers, 6 X-101s, or X-101s, 1 Iskander K, which is a very big kill, and then 8 X-59s and X-69. So overall, it was a very good night for the Ukrainian air defense, and once again showing that they are defending their airspace as best as they possibly can, and hopefully once again showing that Ukrainian skies will be greatly defended, even better defended than they had been in the past. Moving on from that news, and then on into our location unknowns, we were also able to get a very interesting one, as we got to see that the Russians are putting grills onto the Chinese golf carts. It's happening. Coat cages are coming to the golf carts. We can see them building them here in this set of pictures, and then putting a camo net on top, because that will help out everyone with the survivability category incredibly.
Oh my goodness, man, that is so bad. Those golf carts are already bad enough, and now they're going to outfit it with this lovely like chain link fence around the golf cart. That's great. And you know, I saw some people earlier today, now some other analysts, having the audacity to start bashing the Ukrainians' use of Humvees and claiming they're outdated and somewhat archaic, which they are a little bit. They're getting old, I will say that. But nothing compares to the Chinese golf cart that the Russians are using. This is peak terrible equipment.
Well, you know something, I have to say, I don't know who you're even talking about with the analysts, but some analysts, like I don't mean to be rude here, but I'll have to be a little bit honest. Some analysts don't know their head from a hole in the ground, because they're saying that the Humvee is terrible compared to their competition in the war, which is a literal golf cart from the golf course. It's really
Exactly.
it's like do these analysts even know what they're talking about? Because for some reason, some analysts always act like they're geniuses or something. Like, well, why in the world would the Ukrainian use Humvees when America's got flying UFOs? It's like because they're not America, and it's like on top of that, they're not fighting America, they're fighting Russia. And the last time I saw the Russians in the field, they were using spears and also wearing chainmail like it was the 13th century or something around here. So I don't really think they have to worry that much because the Humvee is leaps and bounds above the literal gator or the golf cart that the Russians are using. It's a ridiculous comparison, and it's...
And also, the Humvees are actually saving Ukrainian lives, because I saw a video and showed it in the short war video earlier today. I'm not sure if you have it or not. But one of the Humvees actually saved the Ukrainians' lives when a drone hit it. Like, it was able to withstand it. And the Chinese golf cart doesn't hold up that well to drones hitting it. Like, it doesn't hold up well whatsoever. And even with this chain link fence added to it, whoever's on this thing is going to be pretty much a goner if a drone hits it.
So really quickly, we actually have that clip. I didn't show it here on YouTube today, but I will show you all the clip really quickly of a Humvee that was able to survive pretty much a direct hit to the rear of the vehicle from an FPV drone. So here's the clip. We can see them rolling it forward. Looks like a normal Humvee. Looks like everything's fine until you see the back.
Oh, yeah, it's shredded.
Man, this thing is more shredded than Liver King on roids. It was completely blown away. I mean, this thing is looking like it got plastered. From what we understand, everyone survived, which is a miracle. I'll keep this in mind, though, that the analysts that are saying the Humvee is trash are saying the Humvee is trash because of this, and I'll give you all a little bit of a rabbit hole about this. When the Humvee was designed, it wasn't designed with any armor really built in. It was just really meant to be a military utility vehicle, and in that role, it exceeded incredibly well. Until we invaded Iraq in 2003. Really after we invaded Afghanistan in 2001, but 2003 and the invasion of Iraq was really the catalyst for the bad reputation that the Humvee and a lot of other military utility vehicles around the world would end up getting. What happened is that a lot of Iraqis who didn't really like the United States, and we'll call them Iraqi insurgents, ended up realizing that there was an unlimited amount of explosives and weapons from the now defunct Iraqi army that were sitting around inside of ammunition dumps around the country that they could use against the wicked evil Americans who were occupying Iraq. So what they decided to do is that they would get a whole bunch of these bombs and they would put them onto the sides of the streets. And so whenever an American unit would roll by, they would blow up the bomb, and they would wipe out the American soldiers inside of the vehicle. It was like taking candy from a baby in their minds. The problem is that the first explosives that they conducted did pretty good. And so the United States noticed this, and they said, well, these bombs that they're placing on the side of the road are knocking out Humvees pretty damn good. So let's give them a little bit of armor. So then they started to armor up the windows, and they also started to add a little bit of additional armor into the doors of the Humvees as well, which started to weigh them down a little bit, but it increased crew survivability. So then the Iraqis realized this, and then the Iraqi insurgents went, well, what if we just started putting larger bombs on the side of the road, and we started blowing them up near the Humvees? And so then they started doing that. And then they started blowing up the Humvees again. And so then the U.S. Army said, well, we've kind of armored up the Humvee as best we can. So there isn't really much more that we can do. We just got to hope that, U.S. forces in the field are a little bit better at finding these IEDs and not getting everyone blown up inside the Humvees. And so then the public started to catch on, specifically the news. The mainstream media started to pick on to the Humvees were getting blown up inside of Iraq because the bombs that the Iraqis were putting on the sides of the streets were equivalent to like 250-pound and 500-pound bombs exploding pretty much right under a Humvee, which really nothing would ever survive that, but nevertheless the news acted like it would. And so the Humvees started to get a reputation.
So wait. I know the extra part of the story, by the way. After the media coverage and stuff like that, that's when the Army started commissioning the JTLV to try to replace the Humvee that's better suited the needs.
Yes, really overall, they came up with the MRAP concept, or what's called the mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicle. These were specifically designed, like the Max Pro, and I'll show you all the Max Pros, which we've seen in Ukraine. These were specifically designed to deal with mines, or IEDs, improvised explosive devices, that were placed alongside roads that were meant to blow up Humvees, really, as their thing. And so the news really started to make it, oh, the Humvee is a death trap. It's going to get everyone killed. And so the U.S. military, the Department of Defense, ended up coming up with MRAPs like the Max Pro, which were specifically made to survive the explosions of these kinds of mines. So then the Iraqis saw these get introduced. The Iraqi insurgents did. And so what was their response, folks? Was their response to stop blowing up IEDs on the side of the road, or to make the IEDs even bigger, and then sometimes coat them in copper, which would liquefy in the explosion, so that way you would try and penetrate the armor of even these mine-resistant ambush-protected vehicles? The answer is they made the bombs bigger, and then also put copper and other kinds of things on them, so that way they would penetrate the armor of these MRAPs even better. So it ended up being, to pretty much break this all down, the reason why the Humvee got a bad rap in really Iraq, and then has a bad rap from there forward, is because an arms race began in between Iraqi insurgents and the U.S. Department of Defense to start armoring up utility vehicles, and for the Iraqis to build their bombs even larger, where they would destroy the even more armored up utility vehicles that we ended up coming up with. So it really was just an arms race. Who had the better armored vehicle, or who could make a bigger bomb to blow up the better armored vehicle? So that's why the Humvee has a bad reputation.
Also, by the way, do you know why the MRAP was eventually replaced by the JLTV?
And why was that, Matthew?
Because the MRAP was super slow because it was so heavy, and even though it had a pretty chunky, I think it was a V8 engine, it really couldn't haul it that fast. And also the thing was super top heavy because these things weighed a ton, and a lot of the weight was not balanced properly. So it kind of like easily tipped over here and there. If a bomb hit it, it could flip over. So they decided to replace it with the JLTV, the new one, the more modern looking light vehicle that has a good bit of armor on it. Not quite as much as the MRAP, but it has a commercial truck engine. I think it's like a Silverado Duramax or something like that in it. And it's really fast. It can brake on a dime, and also it's got independent suspension as well, and can go places the MRAP could not. Which is part of the reason why you see the MRAP being shipped to Ukraine, is because we're replacing our entire fleet with the new JLTV.
And that is largely true, and thank you for sharing that with us, Matthew. And another thing that is interesting about the MRAP design is that Matthew did mention it was top-heavy, it was slow, but the armor was pretty thick. It was really hard to get through the armor of an MRAP. So what did the Iraqis do? They made the bombs so big that when they blew up near an MRAP, it would literally just flip the thing over or send it flying through the air, and usually most of the crew would still end up getting wounded or killed inside the MRAP, simply because the thing was flung off the road with such force from the explosion that really a normal person wouldn't walk away from it unscathed or unwounded. Even if you were tied into the MRAP with a seatbelt, you were still mostly going to come out of it seriously wounded, if not killed. So that is why, putting that all together, the Humvee has a bad rap, and now the MRAPs even kind of get a little bit of a slightly bad rap. Because the reality is, if you armor something, someone will make something that will punch through that armor. Then you have to make something even more armored to survive the brand new weapon that's being used against it, and then the enemy is going to make an even larger and more powerful weapon that will punch through that vehicle, or end up wounding and killing everyone in that one, and so on and so forth, like every arms race in the world. But beyond that, that is why some military analysts out there say that the Humvee's garbage. The Humvee isn't really garbage. Yes, there is a lot of complaints that the Humvee breaks down a lot, which, you know, is with every military vehicle. If you ever listen to anyone who served in the military, they complain about how everything breaks down. But the reality is that most everything in the military has been run through worse than Chris's mom. And so a lot of it breaks down just because it's been worn out. But beyond that, the Humvee is not bad for a utility vehicle. The Humvee does its job. It meets the military's requirements, and it does what it does. It's not great. I mean, it's not great at all. From what I understand, some of them don't even have air conditioners, if any of them don't have any working air conditioners. But it's still not a bad vehicle, and you can see here that it can stand up to some FPV drones in some circumstances like this one. So fairly good. I mean, not bad. But, you know, just to dispel some of the things that people say out there, the reason why they say the Humvee is bad is because of the story I just told y'all, which, if you look at it in a normal perspective, it was going to end up being bad if we measure it in that scenario, because the bombs were only going to get larger, no matter how much you armored up a Humvee to try and withstand a bomb blowing up right under it. But moving on from that, This is the Russian answer to the same thing. It's literally to put a chain link fence around a go-kart, which, I mean, you know, I don't know. This seems like something that a redneck would do down here in Alabama, but I would expect more from the second best military in the world, according to themselves, in Russia. But moving on from also, by the way, no disparaging of the rednecks here in this live chat. I said that as a joke. I deeply respect rednecks because I live around them and they're very intelligent and very crafty people. I think this is actually below redneck engineering. Rednecks would come up with something even better. But moving on from that and on into our next bit of news, it's time for me to go quickly to Twitter. Peter, the Twitter's here. And find the casualty report because I forgot to put it down in the location unknown news because I was trying to find the rest of the news for the day. So really quickly, let me go grab this and oh my buddy, it was high. Ooh!
Oh my goodness, this is high losses right here. Only 6 Bobcats. And Enforcer, after you get done looking at today's losses, I've put it in the likes tab on our Twitter page. Look at yesterday's losses as well, since we weren't able to stream. It was massive.
Goodness gracious, I will make sure to look at it. It must be even better than this one. But beyond that, 1,124 Russian soldiers were wiped out yesterday, wounded and killed in combat, which is a whopping number. That is a very, very high number. Very rarely seen over the course of the war. 14 armored personnel carriers were also destroyed, along with 35 supply trucks, 6 main battle tanks, 38 artillery systems, 24 drones, 5 cruise missiles, 3 anti-aircraft warfare systems, and 6 special equipment vehicles. Overall, it was a wild day in Ukraine, and the Ukrainians inflicted large casualties on Russian forces across the entirety of the front lines. But most importantly, we have to go to our profile in the likes, because yesterday's numbers were about as high.
Oh my goodness. 16 Bobcats, man. That might actually be approaching a record. Like, I haven't seen 16 in a day. I haven't seen any number higher than that, actually. I might have forgotten. It's been such a long time ago. But that is huge. Like, the troop losses from today were massive. But the equipment losses from yesterday, which are these numbers right here, were crazy high.
Man, they were crazy. But not only
Crazy.
that, 950 Russian soldiers were wounded and killed yesterday, along with 15 armored personnel carriers, 35 supply trucks, 7 main battle tanks, 31 artillery pieces, 12 drones, 1 cruise missile, and 16 Bobcat skid steers. So the day was unbelievable. I mean, both days were unbelievable. Over 2 days, the Russians have lost nearly 2,000 soldiers and manpower wounded and killed, which is wild to see. And absolutely unbelievable to know that the Ukrainian defense is being conducted so well. But moving on from the location unknowns, it's time for us to get on into the rest of the news that we have along the length of the front lines from the north all the way down to the south near to the area of Vasilivka. There has been a lot of news coming from the front lines as, action hasn't really died down there. But before we get into that, there are a couple of questions that I want to make sure to answer. So Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so our first question of the night is going to go to a channel legend, which is Hal Rose, who put in a very generous $33 donation. And thank you very much, Hal, for that very generous support. He says, Enforcer Matt, is the era of the tank over yet? And Slav Ukraine, and please pick a question, please. And if you're asking me personally, I would say, probably not yet, but it's looking like tanks might be becoming obsolete in the future. But Enforcer, what say you?
And thank you for the massive support, Hal Rose, and helping this channel keep on running, being a legend, and of course, helping the fundraisers out unbelievably, and also helping this channel to keep on rolling. You are a true legend of the Spring Army, and if it wasn't for folks like you supporting this channel, we wouldn't be able to make this thing possible and keep it running. But to answer your question, I don't think the era of the tank is over. I don't actually think the era of the tank will ever be over. And I'm actually going to have to change that off of what I used to say at the beginning of the war, where the tank is obsolete. The tank will continue to survive into the future, and I'll explain why with a little bit of a history rabbit hole. And it's one that I think all of y'all will really like, because it's about World War II. Way back in the days of yore, back around 80 years ago, when World War II was in full swing, there was a bit of an armor and weapon race during the war, the likes of which hasn't really been seen on the entirety of the Earth since then, at least over this span of time of really 4 years, where tanks went from being fairly low-powered with their main guns to being some of the biggest and heaviest-hitting weapons on the battlefield, yet nevertheless being easily destroyed by a really simple anti-tank weapon that was carried by the infantry. So let me take y'all through this little story. When World War II first began in 1939 in Europe, the Germans rolled forward into Poland, not with the famous Tiger tank, not with the Tiger II. They actually rolled into Poland with this cute little thing right here, the Panzer II. This was the first tank that the Germans would actually use in World War II to invade another country. And funnily enough, these things were also used a little bit in the invasion of Poland, in the invasion of France as well. But by the time France was coming around and that invasion was in full swing, the Germans had already upgraded a little bit into what would be recognized as one of the first medium tanks of the war, and that is the Panzer IV. And I'll show you all one of these right here. These were also used in Poland as well, but the Panzer IV was really Germany's first real proper medium tank, I guess is the best way to explain it. They were around pre-war, but they started to be produced in larger numbers throughout the war. It's actually the most common tank that the Germans used in World War II. But the Panzer IV was first equipped with a short 75mm main gun, which didn't really have a lot of armor penetration, but it did the job for the beginning of World War II. The thing is, though, is that both sides started to realize that these kinds of weapons were being outdone by armor on the other side. The United States was introducing the M4 Sherman. The M4 Sherman had been around a little bit before World War II, but of course started to be mass-produced by the time of World War II. Not only that, the British had a tank that was pretty much impervious to enemy fire, and while it's gotten a little bit of a bad rap after the war for being wildly slow, it was slow for a reason. That tank was the Churchill. This thing was armored up so much that it was pretty much impossible with the guns that the Germans had at the beginning of the war to actually punch through this thing and destroy it. You had to bring up a special gun, which would have been, I believe, the PaK-38, which is a 50mm high-velocity anti-tank gun at the beginning of the war, to even try and really dent the paint on a Churchill, at least from the front. It was nearly impossible to knock this thing out. So the Germans started to try and figure out ways to work around that, and the first time that they would really work around that was in North Africa, and that's when they decided to start whipping out these 88mm flat guns and just use them against targets on the ground. This thing was a massive anti-aircraft gun that was made at the beginning of, really the early part of World War II, meant to shoot down incoming bombers. It was able to fire a large proximity fuse high explosive shell into a pretty high altitude. It could fire up until like 30,000, 40,000 feet, and the shell would explode near a bomber and shoot it down. At least that's the principle. But they found out that if you put an armor-piercing shell in this thing and you fire it at a tank, most things couldn't survive getting hit with this gun. So you really just won. I mean, you fire this thing at something, it would blow it up. So they started to use these against the British in North Africa, and specifically against the Churchill. The Churchill started getting obliterated by these things and practically ended up being useless because, hell, it moved at about 10 miles per hour, and you weren't going to be making it to an 88mm flank position at 10 miles an hour over open terrain in the middle of the desert. So they ended up kind of phasing these out. These started being used in more reserve roles than anything, and the British started to realize that the way forward wasn't heavy armor, because they were punching through the armor so easily. It was actually to try and make sure to be faster. And so the British started to use a new kind of tank. A tank that I'd say actually holds a special place in my heart because it looks so British. The Cromwell. The Cromwell was a fairly new tank which was introduced in service in 1944, actually towards the later end of World War II. But the reason why is because they found out that armor wasn't necessarily the winning attribute of the tank anymore, it was actually its mobility. And so they really souped up the Cromwell. This thing could actually travel at about 40 miles per hour, which in World War II numbers was breakneck speed. So these things could move around, easily fire. It had a pretty decent firepower with a 57mm main gun. But the armor wasn't really there, except for on the turret. The front of the turret was fairly armored, but the rest of it really wasn't. But then, of course, the British, well, actually the Germans started getting blasted, and this is actually a little bit of a crazy story. The Germans started armoring up their tanks because the Panzer IV was getting knocked out fairly easily. So then they came up with the Tiger I, which had great armor. Problem was, it had great armor, great firepower, but it wasn't really mobile. It sacrificed its mobility for the great firepower and the great armor. And then they found out that the United States and the British could actually easily knock out a Tiger I from the front because they made weaponry that could punch through the armor of the Tiger I. So then they made the Tiger II. Which is the new and improved version of the Tiger I. It has absolutely nothing in common with the Tiger I, but it was called the Tiger II. Anyways, This was the latest and greatest thing that the Germans brought out onto the battlefield. And then something happened. When these Tiger IIs, because they were heavily armored and had massive firepower, but had absolutely no maneuverability to speak of, and not only that, the transmissions exploded a good bit, they found out that the biggest enemy of the Tiger II tank was this thing, the bazooka. An M1 bazooka could punch through the front armor of a Tiger II at close range at about, I think it was like 600 feet. 600, 700 feet, a Tiger II was dead if it ever got hit with a bazooka. It would punch clean through, and that was the end of the Tiger II. And so they found out that no matter how much they armored up the tanks at the end of World War II, because the armor for the Germans by this point with the Tiger II was truly ludicrous. The armor was so heavy that no engine of the time could actually keep up with lugging around this kind of armor. They started to realize that armor wasn't the way forward. It was really trying to emphasize mobility and also firepower. And so the tanks at the end of World War II were completely different than the tanks that everyone had at the end of World War II. That was when the Germans introduced their first real tank after the end of the war, which was the Leopard 1 main battle tank. The Leopard 1, and also the AMX-30, which was designed under a similar principle in France, have literally no armor beyond protecting the crew from heavy machine gun fire and maybe some anti-tank weapons, infantry anti-tank weapons that were fired at range. This thing has practically no armor to speak of. It prioritizes firepower and maneuverability at the sacrifice of armor. And this was the way tanks existed at the end of World War II, because the era of the tank looked like at the end of World War II, it was dead. No matter how armored or how powerful these tanks were, they were easily getting destroyed by anti-tank weaponry. And so they decided, forget it. If they're going to be destroyed by anti-tank weaponry, make them fast, make them heavy-hitting, so that way nothing can really shoot at them, because by the time something can, they've either been devastated by the firepower, or the tank is long gone, because it's fast enough to move away. So that's the kind of philosophy they went with. Then the old philosophy started to return, and everyone went, well, if we can make the tanks fast, continuously faster, why not start to armor them a little bit more? And that's when the Germans, specifically talking about their armor development, and this was really reflective around the world, came up with the Leopard 2. Which has the firepower and the maneuverability of a Leopard 1, but it has massively improved armor. And at the time when this thing was introduced, nothing really could punch through the armor of a Leopard 2. Nowadays, that story, of course, has changed, because with brand new armor that's thicker and greater than anything the world has ever seen before, people are going to make weapons that are better and greater than anything ever seen in the world before that can punch through the armor of the Leopard 2. So now, the dilemma is, where does the tank go from here? Because it has pretty good maneuverability, it has pretty good firepower, it has good armor, but the weapons it's going up against can now destroy a tank quite easily. So now, the new realm that everyone's moving down is protection, really more so active protection systems. And we actually talked about this on the last stream we ran before yesterday, when we didn't run a stream. And that is the trophy system. And I'll be showing y'all one of these right here. The trophy system is a brand new kind of a system that is being developed by many countries around the world, but is specifically being used a large amount by Israel to counter Hamas and Hezbollah weapons, such as the TOW anti-tank guided missile system, the RPG, or any others that are being used by enemy forces. This system fires a special charge out of this octagonal shaped object here that will destroy any incoming weapons that are supposed to hit the tank. This protects the tank, meaning that the armor is actually a failsafe. It's not the primary source of protection for the vehicle. The primary source of protection is actually the active protection system. But the armor is also strong enough, like on the Leopard 2, that if you were to fire a infantry anti-tank weapon like an RPG-7 or something along those lines, the armor is still thick enough that it's going to tank the shot and not let it through and into the crew compartment. So this is where the tanks of the future are most likely going to be going, is into researching these really advanced active protection systems to try and protect them from drones and also other kinds of anti-tank weapons that are meant to destroy these vehicles. So I hope that answers that. That was an incredibly deep rabbit hole, but I hope that answers that question really well about where the future of the tank is going, because it's actually going into uncharted territory that's never been seen before, active protection systems. Because throughout the history of the tank, the things that have been sacrificed to improve the categories of others has always been firepower, protection, and mobility. Those three things have determined what a tank looks like and how a tank performs on the battlefield. But now the modern battlefield is moving even out of those parameters and is requiring nations around the world to modify tanks in ways that they've never been modified before. But when you really look at it, to round this all out, the tank is really going the way that aircraft went, because the aircraft went through the exact same thing when air-to-air missiles were introduced into the world. No aircraft could outmaneuver at some point air-to-air missiles that were fired at them. And so then they had to create more or less active protection systems that would protect aircraft from missiles being fired at them. And that was chaff and flares, which we commonly see being fired off by aircraft in Ukraine all the time. But now, tanks are having to go down the same route. They're having to create some kind of an active protection system that'll stop the tank from getting hit in the first place to ever have to worry about armor beyond that. But with that, thank you so much once again for the support, Hal Rose, and thank you so much for asking a really interesting question. I see a lot of people in the chat are talking about that this was a black hole-sized rabbit hole, but it really explains where the tank is going from here and gives a good enough background to explain that the tank isn't dead, because the tank in its form has died multiple times throughout history, but has been rebirthed in a brand new form that is largely different than the one we know right now. But with that,
Me personally, I think the tank's going the way of the dodo bird, because with the drones, that pretty much puts the tanks to shame with all the drones, because it's hard to defend against that. And unless they're going to start basically coming up with really modern ways like the Russians are attempting to do with those large like metal sheets on the side of their tank, it's going to be really hard to basically drone-proof a tank in the future. And in the future, the drones are going to be getting more advanced. They're going to have better targeting systems. They'll probably be much more automated and probably be able to carry more explosives in the future as well. So I don't know. To me, I'm kind of voting that the tank will be going out of style altogether, probably in the next decade or 2 decades is my guess.
I would have to say I don't think the tank will ever die, because the tank, the best way to explain the tank is that the tank took over the role of the cannon on the battlefield, the old style cannon where it directly fired at something, or what we would call in the World War I and World War II sense, the assault gun, which is a larger gun that is brought pretty much right up with the infantry and is fired onto enemy positions to help support their advance. Going off of that, and considering that the tank is really an evolution of that, I don't think the infantry will ever lose the need for something that fills the role of an assault gun, because that's really all a tank is at its basic form, is just a large gun that's fired in support of the infantry. So I have a feeling that it will never truly die. It will just continue to evolve for the modern battlefield, but the concept of a large assault gun supporting the infantry will never truly die. So the tank will never die as a result of that.
Maybe so, maybe so.
Maybe.
If the tanks do evolve, like you're saying, then I would assume that they're going to be probably unmanned in the future, and probably no crews inside of them would be my assumption.
Now, I will believe that's very true. I believe, really, that a lot of the support roles for the infantry will be filtered out, and it will just be the infantry and then guys in offices near to the front lines that are operating all the support units. Like, we're really already seeing that in Ukraine, with the the drone mounted machine guns and RPGs, that a lot of the support roles may be getting phased out. There may not be actual people in the role of machine gunners in the future of war. It may just be an automated vehicle that fills in the role of a machine gun. And then the infantry are really nothing more than riflemen. So that way there's a physical presence on the battlefield for an advance to actually occur beyond just the machines themselves. That may be how the future looks, because we know that AI and remote controlled systems are really starting to take over in every single facet of the war in Ukraine, especially on the Ukrainian side. And so maybe the tank of the future will have a lot of active protection systems, be fairly well armored, but not even have a crew inside of them. And the armor and the systems are just meant to ensure that the tank itself as an object will survive, so that way they don't have to end up expending more resources to try and build another one. Maybe that's the case. But the future is truly boundless, and it's hard to crystal ball what a war of the future will look like. But I don't think the tank will be dead in the future. It will just look very different than the tanks we know of today. But still, Thank you so much once again, Hal Rose, for allowing me to go down a biblical, cosmic-sized rabbit hole. And I hope I was able to answer that to the best of my abilities. But thank you so much once again for being a legend. Long live the Lee Spring Army. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat is going to go to Wellness LSA Latvia, who's a longtime channel legend who throws in a very generous $100 donation. And thank you very much, Wellness, for that massive support. He says, hello, LSA, and greetings, enforcers. You men are stronger than any war vehicle, and thank you very much, Wellness. He says, running the show so long, and after the show, check my fire-spitting video on YouTube, and heart.
Heart, fire, heart. And hey! And thank you so much for the massive support, Wilderness LSA Latvia. And thank you for massively supporting this channel tonight. We thank everyone who supports the channel. Y'all help us to keep this thing ad-free and sponsor-free. And keep running the news the way y'all have seen it for 794 days now, which you kind of touched on a little bit, Wilderness, because we have been running this show for an incredibly long time. We've been running this show longer than some people have even fought in the war in Ukraine, which is crazy to think about, but nevertheless, it's become our reality. Entirely, completely even. This is really our daily lives. And while we didn't run a stream last night, a lot of people are probably thinking that we took that as a break. I actually didn't really know what to do. I said we canceled the show, and now I was sitting here, I was like, dang, I don't know what to do. This has become a part of my life, really, every day. And I can't really think of doing anything else. So luckily, we were able to be here tonight. And not only that, I got to say, thank you for saying that we're stronger than any war vehicle. We try our best to at least be strong in willpower, because it's really just a war of will. Every war is a war of will and a war of determination, really, when it comes down to it. And we hope that on this channel, we make that very clear by continuously going at this day by day, really without end, like a machine. And I got to thank you so much, Wilderness, for massively appreciating that and how much we're always on air, continuously running this thing day in and day out. But we will make sure to check out your fire spinning video on YouTube after the stream. I'll make sure to look into it and see what it's about. But still, thank you so much once again. Thank you for being a big member of the Lee Spring Army, and thank you also for being the Lee Spring Army hoof trimmer from Latvia, which is a really cool job. And now that I've looked into it more, that is really, really interesting, actually. That is a very cool kind of a job to have, trimming hooves, because one thing I didn't really know a lot is that hooves naturally grow like fingernails. Did you know that, Matthew?
I did.
Yeah, so you actually have to shave them down, because in the wild, they would usually get worn down a good bit, but in captivity, they don't really get worn down much, so you end up having to shave them. That's something I never knew, and and that is a really cool occupation to have. But nevertheless, thank you massively so much once again for the support, Wilderness LSA Latvia. I hope that does address that the best I can, and thank you for being a legend and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the final question of the segment, and then we're going to be moving on into the rest of the news. And so, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so the third and last one of the segment goes to Herberg, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, Herberg, for your support as well. And they said, thank God y'all are back today, and that Friday felt like a Monday. Not good.
And and thank you so much for really appreciating that we're back, because I didn't know what to do last night. Like, I really didn't. I told Matthew, I was like, you know, we gotta cancel the show. I was like, we just don't have enough news to run a show. And it was a really kind of a tougher decision to make, because I tried to sit there and see if I could find enough news, or maybe a way to really make the news full, you know, and at least in terms of the amount of news we have, although we didn't really have a lot. So I finally just decided there just is not enough. And one thing that I am uncompromising on is the quality of our news has to be top notch. I don't want to run a filler stream just to run one, just so that way we can be here. This is our job, and this is the way that we support ourselves and make a living. But I would rather take a hit and not run a stream than run one that is really just filler content, so that way we can say we ran one. Because in the end, I want to make sure that they all are getting high quality news. We don't want to be like mainstream news that just keeps running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and doesn't really have much to talk about for about 18 to 19 hours of the day. We don't want to be like that. And so we try our best to ensure the quality. But Herbert, I thank you so much for enjoying that we're here tonight. because if it wasn't for enough news today, we probably wouldn't be here tonight either. And especially without y'all's support in really enjoying this channel and helping us to keep it running, we wouldn't be able to be here without that either. And so I got to thank you so much once again for support, Herberg, and helping this channel to keep on running. Because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't even be able to be here in the first place or even make a judgment call concerning the quality of the news we get to report. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, it is now time for us to move on into the front lines to start covering the news there. In the northeastern area, we were able to see that the 45th Artillery Brigade destroyed Nikitsia, which didn't happen according to Reddit. Moving on from that and into the area of Kremenna, we were able to see that the Ukrainians hit a Russian tank and knocked it out in the region. Rock music ensues, and we also got to see that the Shadow Wizard Money Gang ended up conducting the hit. And here comes the drone, hitting dead on the nail. And bada boom, baby, that explosion was nearly nuclear, Matthew. You know something? That actually reminds me of a whole thing that happened with Poland and us possibly giving them, well, moving our nuclear weapons into the region. And we've heard that Lithuania has actually voiced support for that kind of a thing to happen, for nuclear forces to be stationed inside of Poland. And a lot of people are wondering whether other countries are supporting that or not. Matthew, what are folks saying out there about that?
All right, so we asked the audience on this question. We said Lithuania voices support for Poland to be armed with nuclear weapons, and will more countries begin to support Poland's call for weapons? It looks like 73% said more countries will support it, only 7% said I need more info first, and 8% said nobody else will support that. And as to the question of who else is going to support Poland's call for nuclear weapons, I'm going to say that I'm not really sure if anybody else really will support that, because I'm really not too sure how many countries really want nuclear weapons to proliferate. And even though this is a call by Poland basically to have a stationing of U.S. nuclear weapons in Poland, it's essentially a form of proliferation, and not too many people are in favor of that anymore in the modern day. So I would say this is probably going to be it. Lithuania will probably be one of the last countries to actually say they're putting their hat behind Poland to support them in this effort. And to be perfectly honest with you, I do understand why other countries would not want to support it. Me personally, I wouldn't. I don't see any point in it. And we're basically playing with fire with nuclear weapons. I'm not a big fan of that. I think we should keep our status the way we have it. We're already at a pretty strong nuclear deterrence level, and there's no really reason to move them into Poland. There's really no advantage to that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say I find a strategic advantage to be had in moving nuclear weapons into Poland. Also, really quickly, Mandy, I'm wanting to clarify this because the poll makes it sound like we're giving Poland nuclear weapons. Are we moving, according to the poll, our nuclear weapons into Poland under our control, or are we giving them to the Polish Republic?
Well, that's the thing that's not really clear. Poland is calling for a stationing of U.S. nuclear weapons in Poland. So they're making it sound like the weapons will still be under U.S. control, but I'm not very clear about that. It could be the other way around, but I'm going to say probably U.S. control.
From what I would understand, the United States would never give the Polish Republic nuclear weapons because that would be in violation of the Non-Nuclear Proliferation Act, which we authored and then had multiple countries, multiple nuclear powers, really all of them actually, sign around the world. So I would highly doubt that we would just give Poland nuclear weapons to do what they wish. It would, of course, be under U.S. control in Poland. So going off of that, I would have to say that I believe there's nothing wrong with that. They are a NATO ally. Not only that, the Russians have already escalated by moving their nuclear weapons into Belarus. So I believe that a fair response would be to move our nuclear tactical nuclear weapons into Poland. It allows us the same response time that the Russians would have in the outbreak of a tactical nuclear exchange, and that would make sure to remove the upper hand that the Russians currently would have, at least on the tactical situation on the battlefield. As far as the intercontinental situation goes, of course, that will always be an even standoff, as if one side fires their intercontinental ballistic missiles, the other will still have time to fire theirs, which will assure mutual destruction. As far as the battlefield is concerned, however, with tactical nuclear weapons, it's an entirely different story, and much like anything else involving the military, response time is key. With the U.S. nuclear weapons station currently inside of Germany, it is highly unlikely that the United States would ever be able to get the kind of minimal response time that the Russian Federation would at the moment by launching their nuclear weapons from inside of Belarus. This means that a strategic and balanced response would be to move U.S. tactical nuclear weapons from Germany and into Poland, so that way our response time would be identical, if not the same, as the Russians if they were to start taking off with their tactical nuclear weapons ready to drop on large U.S. or Western military groups that were within the region. So in my opinion, I would say I would support the movement of tactical nuclear weapons by the United States into Poland, because it would be a fair counter to Belarus. But that's really all I believe in it, and it is what it is. But with that, I'm seeing some interesting comments in the chat about it. I'm seeing some people say the tactical nukes are probably in Poland already. And, well, actually, the Polish president said that they've been negotiating the topic. Haven't said that they are in there. And usually, people want to be very clear about where nuclear weapons are. It's just kind of how the world works, because it's such a dangerous weapon that you don't want them to quietly be inside of Poland, because that might freak out the Russians so badly that they actually think we're planning on a preemptive strike, and then they'll strike us first preemptively, although we didn't even have an intention to do that. So usually we publicly announce where the nuclear weapons are, just for the sake of keeping everyone calm and not really causing massive tensions or freakouts on other governments. But let's see here. Some other people are saying, let's see, I feel like having nuclear defenses beats offensive weapons. Remove the nuclear threat entirely off the board. That is one thing that a lot of people have talked about in the past. I'm actually a bigger advocate of denuclearization as far as the weaponry goes. I believe that nuclear technology should be used for entirely peaceful means, such as energy production, which it is wildly efficient at doing. Nuclear weaponry largely causes stagnation around the world. If countries wanted to remove nuclear weaponry, I would say that it would be a good move. Generally because it would allow for large conventional wars to occur that could actually create changes in the world. Now, of course, there is a little bit of a caveat, though. A lot of people don't understand that while nuclear weapons are one of the most, well, it is the most devastating and deadly weapon that the world has ever produced, it is also the thing that has led to the world to largely be in a major state of peace for one of the longest times in world history. While there's always smaller wars going on, like the Gulf War, the war in Ukraine, or, for example, the war that the Philippines are fighting against MILF, there are a lot of wars that didn't happen because of nuclear weapons. For example, a Third World War on the European continent. If it was not for nuclear weapons, that war would have inevitably happened in between the Soviet Union and NATO. Nuclear weapons largely stop that from happening. Nuclear weapons also stop any major conflict from breaking out in between China and the United States, or India and Pakistan, or really any other country in the world, like France and the Soviet Union, or the United Kingdom and the Soviet Union. And now in the modern day, everyone against Russia, or China against everyone else, or both of those folks going up against each other. It largely stops the wheels of motion from turning, because when the wheels of change turn, usually a lot of people end up dying. World War I and World War II are the perfect examples of that. And so, while it's really a double-edged sword, because we don't have major conventional wars because of nuclear weapons, but we also don't have the change that major conventional wars bring because of nuclear weapons. So, kind of a little tough thing. Also, someone said against MILF. Yes, you're hearing that right. There is actually a drug cartel in the Philippines called MILF. I'm not even kidding. If y'all want me to pull it up, I will pull it up. I will show y'all, because I'm not even kidding. Let me go pull it up really quickly. Philippines. Hold 1 second. There we go. So here we go. The Moro Islamic Liberation Front, aka MILF. This is an actual terrorist organization that exists in the Philippines, that the Philippines has actually fought in major battles. I'm not even kidding. Like, entire cities in the Philippines have been turned into battlefields like Mosul because of MILF. I'm not even kidding. Chris's mom is an actual force to be reckoned with in the Philippines. I'm not even kidding.
That's a very unfortunate acronym for this little force here. Very unfortunate.
Dude, I had to throw that in because I knew someone was gonna be like MILF, and I was gonna be like, "Yep, MILF," and I was actually gonna have a legit thing to show. This, I'm not even kidding. You can see right up there, MILF. It's the actual abbreviation for this organization. It's a terrorist faction. It is a literal terrorist organization. But let me see here. Dang, I gotta find this for y'all. Let's see. Let's see. Let's see here. I'm trying to find where the battle happened. Oh my god. You've got to be kidding me. There was a battle that actually happened against these people, and it was famous because a Philippines Special Forces fighter actually was walking across the rooftops while people were firing machine guns at him and stuff was blowing up all around him, and he had a little cup of tea, and when he finally made it to his post, he just went, whoo, and like started drinking the tea, and it was a battle that was happening against these folks. So wish I could show y'all more about them, but it's a real thing. I'm not even kidding. Many of y'all got had though. Many of y'all actually thought that I slipped up there and I said the other MILF, but no, I was talking about the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, because cultured people know that Chris's mom is a terrorist. But moving on from that, and into the rest of our frontline news, it's time for us to get on into the rest of what happened near the Crimean Forest, as we actually got to see that some Russian soldiers were captured near the area of Turney just not too long ago. Here's the clip. And here are the Russian prisoners right here, wearing the shush helmets and all. And we see the Ukrainians gathering up the prisoners.
Свяжи его, блядь! Разгрузки снимаем, пацаны.
Не, наоборот.
Чего?
Вони всі в броніки должны виходити.
Виходи,
Наверх.
Стой!
Валу!
Магазины вытаскивайте.
Не надо, все там снимется потом.
Сюда?
Подъем!
Давай, аккуратно, по одному.
Slow! Wow, I haven't heard the outro with music in a while, man. Jeez, I forgot they had like the trumpet thing and everything. But still, with that, I hope that shows y'all an interesting little clip about how the Russians are doing incredibly well in the area. They are actually surrendering in some areas. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see that a Kamaz truck was destroyed in the area today by the Shadow Wizard Money Gang. Here's the clip. I can see, Matthew, that it was a mistake mentioning that there was a terrorist group called MILF, because now the chat is absolutely alive with the idea of MILF. But we can see the drone coming in for the Kamaz. And bada boom, baby, right on the fuel tank. That Kamaz do be bumping, and it's getting out of there with a fire on the fuel tank.
Down with Kamaz.
Man, the Kamaz do be putting it, man, that Kamaz be throwing it back. Look at that big section. Look at that, holy moly. But we can see it, the continuing.
They think nothing about whatsoever about driving a truck that's on fire. Like, they don't think this could blow up on us and kill us worse than a drone would, but they don't think that.
Man, they almost ran over the dog. They almost ran over the dog, blade.
Man, Fluffy about had their last day with the steaming hot Russians.
Oh my lord, dude, it's really starting to burn now, and the Russians like, oh, blade, what do we do, blade? Abandon it, blade. But the cupcake, blade, we built one already. Didn't shave it, blade, just run. The driver was still in there. He's now getting out because it's getting a little warm.
Got to see him throw out a gas can?
Something like that. It's like, it's red. Wait, is that
what
gas?
The hell?
What is that?
Gummy.
Gummy bear?
Big dummy. You know, sit inside the truck with a gas can in his lap. It's like, how much more stupid can you get?
Dude, he said, I'm going to die today. I'm going to give my family some chocolate cake and water park tickets, please.
Oh, now it's really ablaze, man. That's on fire good.
Man, that'd be looking like a nice barbecue.
Well, it's really putting a damper over the whole town.
Man, I'm telling you what, it really was. But you know, one thing that wasn't dampened, the Ukrainian spirit. Moving on from that into the next clip near Verkno-Kamyanka, we actually got to see that a Russian sniper managed to shoot down a Baba Yaga somewhere in the area. There's Baba Yaga right there, and he's firing at it. But Baba Yaga is resilient. It tanks multiple shots, most likely.
Also, did you know that Ukraine is developing a stealth version of the Baba Yaga? It's an attachment that goes on top of the drone itself, and it masks the sound of it, so the Russians will not hear it flying up in the future on these prototype models.
Wow, that's really cool. I actually hadn't heard about that today. But now we can see that he struck the battery, Matthew, and the Baba Yaga will be going out.
Oh dear! With that little stealth system, though, they wouldn't be able to hear it.
I think in the thermals they'd still see it, but hopefully, luckily, they wouldn't be able to hear it. That is a big plus. Oh, look, there it is. It's still flying around a little bit. He's still shooting at it. Melanie Cortez said, "Oh, it's called a Coke cage? I thought it was a Coke cage. My bad." Aw, man. Well, on another channel, it is a Coke cage. Aw, man. Give me the Coke and rum. Hold the rum. Aw, man.
Coke.
Oh, man. You get
Man,
it.
it's pretty bad when you measure your Coke not in bottles, but in bowls.
Ooh. That was actually clever, man. You're very clever. And speaking of clever, we can see right here that this Russian outro is kind of cheaper looking than the Ukrainian ones. But anyways, there was a Baba Yaga.
Very Russian propagandist-esque, really. It's got that little Russian propaganda, like hardcore, like trying to be macho man thing going on.
I want to be a macho man. Oh, we got the deserter? Yeah. It's like, no. It's like, wait. But anyways, we also got to see that some other Russians attempted to shoot down an FPV drone and failed. Wait a minute, is this Vadim, bled? Oh, this is not Vadim, bled. This was very similar, though. Vadim, bled. Well, they failed. But moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see some Ukrainian artillery pieces. Check this out. Y'all are going to love this.
On our channel, we often show the Western-made weapons as a part of military aid to Ukraine. Today we have something different. It's the first artillery system of 155 caliber produced in Ukraine, designed in Ukraine. It's the Bogdana.
Yeah!
Nice chassis on that truck for that vehicle.
It's the modern Tatra chassis. The new and improved Badana.
Good choice.
Today,
It doesn't look like it's as mobile as that Swedish vehicle, though. You know, that Swedish version of this. You know, with the Archer.
In January of this year, but they have already shown what they are capable of.
In the short time that we have been using it, we have hit platoon strongholds, warehouses, electronic warfare stations, manpower, and mortar crews. The most memorable thing was the military equipment depots. When a shell hit the right place and the ground under the enemy's feet start to burn, that's when I remember the most.
The idea of NATO-caliber artillery systems in Ukraine was announced in 2017, and in 2019 the prototype of Bogdana was already being tested. With the start of the full-scale invasion in 2022, this prototype was armed and sent to the front, where it took part in a spectacular operation.
Oh my,
to liberate
dude, that
Smyrna
chassis
Island.
looks like it could not handle the recoil too well in this video. Look at this, man. Watch.
This prototype was
Look at the
armed
flex.
and sent to the front,
I was
where
like,
it
ooh.
took part in a spectacular operation
Bent
to
chassis.
liberate Smyrna Island. Serial production was launched in the spring of 2022. Since then, Ukraine has produced dozens of these systems.
That interior looked like a Ford truck.
Yeah, it really did.
There is a driver, but the driver's role extends beyond driving when the vehicle stops. At that point, he becomes involved in the work of the entire crew. The gun commander is in charge of the calculation, while the gunner aims. The charger and the shellman are responsible for the ammunition.
Oh, there's a failing right there. It doesn't have the kind of autoloader system that the Caesar or the Archer has. It still has to be hand-loaded by the crew. So while it's
That's a deal breaker.
Yeah, while it's a lot quicker to set up because it's a wheeled SPG, it still is going to have the setback that you have to have a larger amount of crew members to be able to man and operate the gun because it still has to be hand-loaded and has no autoloader system. So a little unfortunate.
This is probably a hell of a lot cheaper to make, though, than the Archer when it comes to just cost.
Oh, probably much more so. But then again, you're also expending a lot more time and effort with training because you have to now train multiple crew members on their roles with the gun and how to also operate the gun and also where to stand in their positions and all that. So while it is cheaper, you're replacing the expensiveness of the piece for more complexity and also requiring more crew, which has always been the no-no of the military world, because whenever an innovation has been made that cuts down either on training or the amount of people that have to be involved in operating something, that has always been done, even at the expense of cost. And so this system is kind of going against the grain, and I have a feeling that when the Ukrainians get the chance, they'll probably phase these out as well, and most likely go entirely with Caesars or some other kind of a Western system like the Archer. But it's not bad for what it is, especially for what they're going up against that the Ukrainians have in their arsenal. It's actually a major step forward.
The unit commander, Savage knows how to perform the duties of each of his 5 crew members. Despite being 57 years old and a veteran of Afghanistan and Yugoslavia, he didn't hesitate to join the armed forces of Ukraine.
Does this work exhaust you in any way? I can tell you that this can exhaust even 30-year-olds. People adapt. We understand that we simply have to do our job. Of course, we want the war to end soon, for us to emerge victorious and return home.
Due to Ukraine's desperate need for more artillery systems, the Bogdana can be seen mounted on different chassis. We filmed 2 different versions on the Czech Tatra, and there are also variations on the Ukrainian Kras trucks. Most of the crew members
the Tatra is better, I think.
I think the Tatra looks cooler, yeah.
Artillery. Although it has been in serial production for 2 years, this is a very young age for an artillery system. In fact, these individuals are among the first to test the Bogdana in combat.
It was hard at first. We had to relearn almost everything. We are like pioneers in this regard. There is no extensive experience and no guidelines on how to do this correctly. We fine-tune all these processes based on our own experience. The guys don't strictly adhere to the manuals because they realize from experience that it's the best to work this way.
And they learned quite well. In 3 minutes, they can shoot 4 shells and relocate. The 155 caliber allows the crews to deliver NATO high explosive or cluster shells within a 40-kilometer range. The team also successfully used M982 Excalibur guided munitions. To protect against drones, this model has a metal mesh covering the most vulnerable spots of Bogdana, but fortunately it has not yet come in handy.
It has a cope cage. It has like a small, minute cope cage.
When we're working, the engine is running, and we don't hear whether there is outgoing or incoming fire. The infantry may hear the sound, but here, near the Tatra, you can't hear it. The engine is humming, and you don't know. You also cannot see in the sky whether something is flying or not. This is probably the most unpleasant thing. But I'm so used to it that I just don't pay attention.
It was announced that Ukraine is now producing 6 of such systems per month.
It was announced that Ukraine is now producing 8 Bogdana systems per month.
Dear viewers, by the time of the editing of this video, a new update came that in April of 2024 Ukraine will produce 10 Bogdana systems. We can only hope that such growth rates will not stop.
Having such a production in times of war is extremely important. Besides increasing the firepower potential of the Ukrainian army as a whole, it provides more workplaces and supports the economy. Finally, Bogdana is independent from partner countries in terms of repairs and maintenance.
We don't need to send an application abroad or take the gun abroad. Just recently, a service team from the factory came to me, and we repaired the gun on the spot right here, in combat conditions.
The fighters note that one of the biggest cons is the weight of the system. This makes them very attentive to the ground. They carefully plan routes and firing points based on the density of the soil to ensure that the truck will not get stuck.
This is a good working unit, with certain nuances. And even Caesar wasn't built the way it was from day one. That's why we understand that this gun is a new weapon, and we need new improvements. I'm especially proud of my country for transitioning this type of weapon. Artillery, as they say, is the god of war. And without artillery, it will be difficult for infantry and other units. So, I believe this particular gun will make a significant contribution to our victory.
And with that, that is the end of the video from United 24, but showing off the Ukrainian-made Bogdana SPG, which is a contender in between the Archer and the Caesar, but has some drawbacks, but it once again has some pluses as well. But still, a very interesting system to see, and great to know that the Ukrainians are constantly attempting to improve and also continue to produce systems of their own to help out in the war effort. At this moment, the Bogdana system is being produced at around 10 per month. That means that by the end of this year, they will most likely have produced around an additional 100 of these systems, or maybe around 90 of them if that production cycle continues. It most likely will increase, though. They most likely will be able to cap off at around 14 to 16 vehicles per month, which is a huge improvement and will once again be helping out greatly in effectively making Ukraine's artillery almost unhittable, at least from the shoot and scoot aspect. But moving on from that and into our next clip in the Bakhmut area, we're also able to see a Ukrainian drone filming some Russian soldiers near to the southern area. And we can hear the little voice. Also, by the way, while we're watching this clip, I will have you know that this Russian here is standing around. He looks kind of pale. Really pale. And we can see
looks parched.
He looks parched, honestly, man. You know, that's what I was about to say. And actually, it looks like he's about to relieve himself. So interestingly enough, that actually moves us on into something that we have to bring up. The guy looks a little parched. He's relieving himself a little. But you know, at least he had a little bit of liquid in him. And you too can have the right amount of liquid in you by going to officialenforcerstore.com and getting one of these beautiful LSA flag mugs. These things are absolutely impressive. Made with a state-of-the-art process called sublimation, these things are dishwasher and microwave safe. With an 11 fluid ounce capacity, this will fill all of your hydration needs each and every day. Department of the LSA approved. These are the mugs you need to be able to perform your daily activities, whether it be in the office, whether it be at your computer, whether it be in the confines and relaxation of your own home watching the stream. The LSA mug is the mug for you. Not only that, 10% of the profits are donated directly to United 24, ensuring that your support of this channel and also the purchase of one of these mugs will be helping to put an old fist right on the lower jaw of Putin and making sure to remind him that the Lee Spring Army will never stop sending its regards around the world. Elegant and sleek. Not only that, it is also helping this channel to keep rolling. You can buy an unlimited number of these things, and some people have already been receiving their Lee Spring Army mugs. As of today, we've been able to get incredibly quick shipping times on these things, a really quick turnaround, and also one other thing that I have to share with y'all, and this is a very important one, the most important that I can tell y'all, is that these mugs were supposed to end tonight. The limited edition sale was supposed to end tonight. But we have gotten so many requests from so many of y'all to extend the limited edition run just for a little bit that we are going to be extending this up until Tuesday for now. So the limited edition run isn't going to be ending tonight. It's actually going to be ending by Tuesday, the next time that we run a live stream after Sunday. So make sure that you get yourself a Lee Spring Army mug, because this offer will be rounding out soon, because we'll have to get ready for the next merchandise run, which we feel many of y'all are going to be really excited to see. But make sure to get one of these, because Matthew put in an unbelievable amount of effort into making these mugs as nice as they are. We were able to get another one of them today here at the house for a in-production run quality test, and they are truly incredible looking. They are great, they are sleek, they are beautiful, and not only that, it helps this channel to keep on rolling, and it helps Ukraine to keep on trucking as well. And so with that,
these aren't ugly mugs. These are beautiful mugs. And also, Enforcer, you can go to officialenforcerstore.com if you want to take a look at these mugs and take a look at one.
It's already on screen.
Yes, indeed. It's got to call it out verbally.
Oh, I thought you were telling me to do it again. I was like, we're already here. I was like, what the hell are you talking about? But if you want to get to the website, speaking of that, that's actually a very important thing to point out. If you want to get to the website, to get to one of these mugs, go down to the link in the description below this live stream. Click on more on the description, and it's going to be the first link that you'll see there. It'll say, get your LSA mug here. Click on that link, and then you'll be sent directly to the website that we have, and you'll be able to get a mug. Once again, there is no limit on the amount of mugs that you can order. You can get all of them that you can, but this is the only time that we're ever going to be selling Lee Spring Army mugs. So get one while you can. But with that, we are now going to be moving on from that merciless plug that we had to throw in, and on into our next bit of news out of the area of southern Bakhmut, and on into the area where we got to see a T-64BV in the east. This thing be looking juicy. I love to see it. We can see it firing as well, and just doing its thing. It just looks really nice. That's all I have to say about it. It just looks good, and you gotta respect it for looking good. Moving on from that and down to the area of Avdiivka, we did get to see an FPV drone hitting some Ruskies as they were carrying around infantry. And also I heard your phone, Maddie, go right then and there.
Oh, you heard that?
Yeah, I actually heard that. I was like, I never heard that before. But when you see those Russians...
that was actually an order coming in for the mug.
Really?
Yeah, that's two of them, actually. Someone just ordered to sell a mug. They said, I want one of those beautiful mugs. It's not ugly, it's beautiful. And someone said, let me have 4 of those.
Dang, son, 4, goodness. That's a whole family.
They got the whole set.
Man, they got the whole piece. Oh, and here comes the next drone, by the way. Check this out. Now, that is one beautiful mug right there. But with that, that's the end of that clip, and we'd love to see it. We'd love to see it. Moving on from that and into the area of Krasnoyarivka, we also got to see a destroyed T-90M in the area. So that's becoming a little bit more common these days with the introduction of the T-90M. Also, I like how instead of pointing out the front of the turret, or the front glacis or anything, which I feel is one of the most identifying marks of a T-90M, they point out the muzzle brake on the NSV machine gun, which you could find on many tanks, and also the commander's hatch, which isn't really anything that exceptional either, but, they point out what they point out. Anyways, with that, I hope that shows that fairly well. Nice to see. And moving on from that and into our next clip, we also got to see a Bradley firing on them Russians. We're going to have to mute that. But we see the Bradley rolling up, popping its smokes, driving right through the smoke. They're about to start laying down that heat right there. And Leonardo Willie said, a line to toss in, same top level quality as the excellent flags. Really impressed with the flag. Thank you so much. We put in a lot of effort into trying to quality control those flags. And, we personally looked over each and every one of them to make sure that they were the highest quality. Any rejects that we found were not sent out. So every single one of them was the highest quality we could get. So I'm so happy that y'all really liked them, because every single thing we do is going to be that kind of quality. You can always assure yourself that anything we put on the official Enforcer store will be the highest quality that you've ever seen. But moving on from that,
I searched far and wide for those flags. It took me probably at least 2 or 3 weeks to actually locate a really, really good supplier for those. And it's very nice being able to control the quality of our current merch store, which is something that I will never do again, which is outsourcing it. We'll always do it ourselves from now on. And even the flags were really good quality. The mugs are really good quality. We hand selected that supplier as well. And even on the next merch run, we're already working on that as well and hand selecting it. So that's something we love to control.
And with that, we are now moving on to our next clip, where we got to see that the Russian forces were slowly moving forward in the area, according to the British Ministry of Defense. But nevertheless, very interesting to see. And we're going to be moving on from that and on into the next bit of news, a little bit further south and towards the area of Novomykhailivka, where we got to see that the Ukrainians struck a drone radar site. And this was a very interesting one.
Or taking out a Pontiac.
Taking out a Pontiac.
A Podlac.
I suppose so, yeah. It's a Pentiac stick, whatever you want to call it.
You know, that's the name of the radar system.
Are you sure?
It's
a
a
podlet.
podlet.
It's a podlet. That's why I didn't hear the Pontiac. I was like, what in the hell?
No, it's a Gran Torino.
Also, Matthew, holy moly!
Hey!
Holy moly! Thank you to
This Marty Kinetic Possum is back, and also BC
And BC
Scammers is doing a huge amount. Good lord.
the both of you. Goodness gracious, thank you so much. Goodness, that is crazy. Crazy, believe. And also, Matthew, did you see the Hot Dog Man bot come in all caps that I had to Stugna out of the chat?
No, you got him so quick I didn't even see him. That's unusual. I usually see everything.
Oh, you ought to see that one. That was a real clown move right there. It's like, oh, really? But moving on from that and into the next clip, near to the area of Novoslatopol, we were able to see that some Russians got hit by the 40th. And we can see here, I don't know what this intro card is. I have no idea.
It's Clip Art Central.
Let's see. We got Thanos in the bottom right. We've got Thuggin in the top right. We've got baby Gorbachev down here in the bottom left. And then we have Drone. And then we have Flat Cap that Lenin would have worn. And Knuckle Duster. This is one hell of a trip right here.
That is wild, man. Also, I really want the FPV drone in the top left corner. That's one of those nice ones.
Oh, look. He's being knighted. King of the drones.
Oh, then he's gonna chop him up.
Man, he's gonna cut a he was gonna cut a Chris's mom. And we see them getting the drone ready. And Don C, I'm running for president in 2040. Be ready. Be ready. And while we watch these Ukrainian drones hitting their positions, I want to give a quick shout out to several folks who sent in some incredible fan mail. I'm not going to list off y'all's names, but y'all know who you are. Thank you so much for the book, and thank you to the other two of y'all for the kind letters that y'all sent in as well. We have been seeing it. It's just that what the hell? What is this? What the hell was that?
Wait a minute, was that a Ukrainian or was that a Russian?
Those were
my
Ukrainians. They strapped their freaking cornets to the guy's back and were like flinging him around. What the hell is this? Dude, they're just clowning around these days.
Wait until they show the part where they toss him.
Dude, they toss him and he lands back first on the damn cornets rocket. But beyond that, thank you to all three of y'all. Once again, like I was saying before we got interrupted with that craziness. What the hell is this video? I got interrupted again. What is this? Man, they're not supposed to be laughing and joking. They're supposed to be crying.
No laughing. That's sick.
Someone call out Hot Dog Man. Have him put on the case. But anyways, beyond that, I'm not going to get interrupted no matter what beyond this point. I got to thank y'all so much for sending those kind words. It was very nice to read them. We always see the fan mail, and I'm sorry that I haven't been able to get to that over a couple of days because we've been a little busy and trying to find ways to tie that into the stream, but I thought right now would be as good a time as any. But thank you all to all three of y'all once again for sending in the kind gifts and letters.
Wait a minute, what was that? Go back, I only caught a glimpse of that. What was going on?
Man, look at this. They're sitting there.
Damn, that's next thing you know, the Russians be talking about they're doing voodoo rituals or something under that red light.
Nah, man, they got the didgeridoo going and the going as they do that. It's like, look, they're doing it again. Dude, this video is nothing but buffoonery, absolute tomfoolery, bamboozling. Shenanigans. Oh my god. In the middle of it, they nuke someone. Jeez. And we see the drone coming in and hitting. And now that we've made a hot dog, well, I'm sorry, not a hot dog plug. It's actually plugged the Hot Dog Man's people to come out in the chat. Now that we've plugged the flag, now Hot Dog's men are running in, trying to do all kinds of crazy things in the chat. And don't you
damage control. They were really hurt when I made that joke about the counting the Coke and the bottles and the bowls. That really sent them over the edge.
And don't you worry, my wonderful hot dog people friends. We know each and every one of y'all. We really do. We know where y'all are, what y'all are saying, and we see it all the time. So when you come in here and you say something like that, you're not really shocking us because we already know that you're hot dog man's people. Because we pretty much get to, there's very few exceptions to this rule, but we pretty much know every single one of y'all's accounts names and where y'all are on Discord and everywhere else. So it's nothing shocking to us, and very, very sad attempts, I do have to say. And meanwhile, the Ukrainians are still up to their tomfoolery and shenanigans in the field, having a fun time.
That guy took off. He was sprinting.
Dude, he went, Yeow! He's like, heal no blitz. Oh, here comes a group. Uh-oh. We know what happens with groups. Two group. And these guys get knocked out. Two group. We see the Ukrainians duct taping an RPG to the bottom of this drone and sending it in. And oh, my goodness, they are obliterating these people. And with that, we then get the outro here, which we got Slav Squat Hound up here in the top left. We have a DJI Mavic 2 or a 3. We then have the thing. I never got the name for this one. And then we have a Snapchat emoji Bitacon character thing down here, covered in Mardi Gras beads and being showered by confetti. Also bald. But with that, wait a minute, bald and financially destitute? Is that you? But anyways, moving on from that clip and on into our next one, we also get to see that near Zahirne, the Russians tried to hit a drone with a shovel, and they ended up failing. And so, we're now going to be showing this clip right here. Here it is.
Oh, I think he juked it.
Oh, no.
Oh, no, he didn't.
Nope. Nah, he didn't juke that thing. And we're going to stop it right there because the remainder of it shows the aftermath, which wasn't that nice. But moving on from that and into the area of Novopokrovka, we also got to see a Ukrainian Su-25 firing off dim rockets. Check it out. Here's the clip. But anyways, there goes some more rockets being fired. You see the aircraft firing their chaff and flares as well. And now we're possibly going to get to see the rocket impacts downrange. And look how accurate the spread was on those. It was actually fairly accurate.
Fairly well.
Fairly well. I hope we address this fairly well. And that's the end of the clip. But nice to see. And we love to know that they were able to, once again, hit the Russians pretty good. Moving on from that and up into Tvrivsky, we also got to see the HIMARS launching ATACMS missiles. La 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 la. Look at them go. Isn't that nice?
Nothing like the sound of a nice roaring, thundering jet engine.
It's nice. I like it. Moving on from that and on into our next clip down in the area of Rostov, we also got to see a Euro 4320 supply truck getting hit in southern Ukraine as well. Observe. Oh, блядь, сука, блядь, right on the front hood. And that's the end of the clip. But they hit it, and they got it. Moving on from that and on into our next clip. After that, it is now time for us to move all the way up to Kyiv. Because y'all know what time of the night it is. Y'all know what it is. And let me make sure to go and get it. Hopefully we have a fresh one. Because I also forgot to put this down. Because these are actually done as two separate things each night. Each sold separately. And we do have one. We have the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 794 of the war. So let me make sure that we got the subtitles for English. And without further ado,
Well, hello,
here's
everybody.
the speech.
I know that many of us remember meeting for the first time at Ramstein.
Also, we're going to be moving forward to the speech from President Zelensky, which is about 27 seconds in. So, without further ado, here's the speech
Of Ukraine.
Secretary Austin, I thank you for your leadership in this Ramstein format. Distinguished ministers and generals, General Brown, dear friends, I'm pleased to greet you and to say that Ramstein has indeed become a global event. If we in Ukraine had not received your help with weapons, and if your countries had shown indifference to the destiny of our people, the world would definitely be different. And it is worth reminding, predatory regimes like Russia's are rapidly increasing their appetite for aggression. When they succeed in one part of the world, it creates problems in many other places. Aggression spreads when not stopped. If our solidarity with you had not worked out, and if your reaction to the war had remained only in words, the world would have had to deal with a much more powerful Russia. Many people worldwide would still believe that Russian missiles cannot be shut down. Many people would still be convinced that the Russian army is capable of crushing anyone's independence. Many would grovel in front of Putin and not even try to defend their sovereignty if it were not for this example of ours. An example of courage that works and that must work completely. Dear friends, please do not forget what you are deciding. This is not just about the arms supply. You are deciding the fate of the world that will either live by rules that we all recognize or depend only on the mercy of those whose violence is brutal. At what point is the war down? After 2 years of Ramstein, the answer is clear. Everything still depends only on our interaction, on how quickly we act and whether our agreements are fully implemented. Although in half a year, while we were waiting for a decision on the American support, the Russian army managed to seize the initiative on the battlefield. We can still now not only stabilize the front, but also move forward, achieving our Ukrainian goals in the war. Each of you understands what will be most effective. First, long-range weapons. No part of the occupied territory of Ukraine should remain safe for the occupier. And I thank every leader whose solutions are already working hard on the front lines, storm shadows, scalps, and ATACMS. The range should be sufficient. Second, air shield. This year, Russian jets has already used more than 9,000 guided aerial bombs against Ukraine. And we need the ability to shoot down their combat aircraft so that they do not approach our positions and borders. It is possible. It is just as possible as giving protection to the cities of Ukraine from Russian rockets. We urgently need Patriot systems and missiles for them. This is what can and should save lives right now. At least 7 Patriots are necessary for our cities to be safe. You have these systems, and they truly can change the situation now, change it for the better, as well as accelerating the transition to F-16. Our counter-terrorism cooperation must be more effective than Russia's cooperation with the regimes in Iran and North Korea. Third, artillery. Many of those present at Ramstein were soldiers. And you can imagine what our soldiers feel when they simply have nothing to respond to enemy fire. The 1-to-10 ratio of artillery in our country to that of the Russian army inspires Putin to fight on. He believes that he will walk through the ruins, and he will try to launch his counteroffensive. We must disrupt it. Our soldiers need artillery enough 155 calibers to stop Russian assaults and conduct our own active operations. And I thank every country that really effectively helps with this. And one more, please pay maximum attention to the production of weapons, both in your countries and in our joint projects with you and in Ukraine. Now in Ukraine, we have the potential for the production of drones in particular, which significantly exceeds our financial capabilities. Same with the electronic warfare systems, likewise in many areas in your countries. We need to fill our defense capacities with real orders. And we are currently forming new brigades to strengthen our positions. They need support, just like the brigades already operating at the front. Our team participating in Ramstein will present all the details. Even best soldiers cannot change the war without sufficient number of weapons. And I'm proud of Ukrainian soldiers. Each of you knows the strengths and capabilities of our soldiers. They know how to win. They must win. But Ukrainian defenders need your sufficient and timely support. Exactly what you would need to win if you were soldiers in this war. Thank you for your attention. I'm grateful for your support, and I would especially like to thank the U.S. Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin. We appreciate that it was on your personal initiative that exactly 2 years ago, the Contact Group on Defense of Ukraine anti-war coalition was created, which united efforts and rallied more than 50 countries of the world. Ukraine is grateful to you for your dedication, for the tireless work of your team, and all of the partners for the saved lives of our citizens. Thank you. Slava Ukraini.
And Herom Slava.
And with that, that is the end of the speech from President Volodymyr Zelensky here on day 794 of the news of the war in Ukraine. And that moves us on into the second segment of this stream, where we get to talk to all of y'all about anything y'all want to talk about. And whatever y'all want to talk about, we can talk about anything. We can talk about history, rabbit holes, architecture, your hometowns, hood reviews. We can talk about anything, literally anything and everything. It is entirely up to y'all what this next segment will look like. But I'll have folks know, the news segment, it's over. There will be no more news from this point forward, unless if something very wild happens, and we probably end the stream and then start another breaking news stream if that does happen. For now, there is going to be no more news. It's all questions. It's all getting to talk to y'all. So if you want to sit around and chit-chat, feel more than free to hang around, because this is probably one of the more interesting parts of the stream, and where we get to some very interesting things that are said. But Matthew, take it away.
All right, so jumping into our last question segment of the stream, we still have a poll to address, and that poll says, which strategy would work best when it comes to U.S. military aid to Ukraine? It looks like 57% said give Ukraine large amounts of old equipment versus the alternative of giving Ukraine small amounts of new equipment, which only 6% voted for that option, and 29% said Ukraine really needs a combination of old and new equipment. And on this one, I have to say, between the two options, if I had to pick, I would say it'd be better to give Ukraine older equipment in larger numbers than really small amounts of new, modern, and expensive equipment. And I say that because Ukraine is basically fighting meat waves from Russia, and while the new equipment probably is more effective and useful, it will still be ultimately destroyed eventually. That's just the chances of war are pretty high for destroying that equipment, and Ukraine won't be able to replace that new equipment at the same rate they could replace the old style equipment. So while some critics are saying that we're basically using Ukraine as a dumping ground for old United States equipment and replacing our own equipment with brand new ones, there is a reason for that. It simply works better for Ukraine, and I'm definitely with the 57% on that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that large amounts of old equipment is the best way to go. One, because it's something that is actually doable. And two, it ensures national security interests around the world. We do not want the Russians to get their hands on modern advanced weaponry unless if we were to enter a full-on war with them and then one of those vehicles ended up being captured or ended up being shot down. Then it would be fine for those secrets to be lost. But we want to make sure to keep our proprietary edge for the large part up until we go into a conventional war with one of our major rivals around the world, because that's how we ensure that they're too scared to actually do anything against us. So I would say that a larger amount of old equipment would be good, and on top of that, that old equipment still outdoes the Russians by about 30 years technologically at the moment, so it is still top-notch and great for the Ukrainians to use. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion, and with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, like Catherine F. said in the live chat, the old equipment from the U.S. is still worlds better than the Russian junk. And that's also another point as well. Why give Ukraine the most modern equipment that is hard to replace when even our old equipment is superior to the Russian equipment and we can give it to them in large numbers? That's all they really need. And when it comes to foreign aid, I'm a big believer in giving folks what they need to defend their countries and not necessarily what they want. Because the stuff that everyone wants is the high-end expensive stuff, which really should honestly be reserved for us because we're spending our money on it. But when it comes to supporting Ukraine, I say give them what works and nothing more and nothing less. But that's just me. But anyways, moving on here to our first super chat. Moving back into that super chat segment, we have a $200 donation from BC Skyman. A very generous amount of donation there, and thank you very much, BC, for that generous support once again. Supporting the channel massively, like usual. He says, good evening to the Enforcers and the wonderful LSA family. He says, Yuri is going to Ukraine in June and is taking another shipment of BSN Leukomed T Plus absorbent film wound dressings in size 4-inch by 11-inch, and that this is the #1 request now from the front lines.
And also, Matthew, is there an end part? Are you still there?
And he said this will be presented from the LSA.
Hey! And thank you so much for the massive support, BC Skyman. Unbelievable support in helping this channel to keep on running. And I gotta say, good evening to you. And I hope that y'all are having a great time over there at BC Skyman HQ over in Georgia. But beyond that, it is very good to hear that Yuri is going to be going over in June and taking another shipment of those BSN Leukomed T Plus absorbent film wound dressings in size 4-inch by 11-inch. That is very good to hear. And that is something very interesting to know that that's one of the most requested items on the front line is medical equipment. Because there are a lot of folks right now that are trying to help out with medical equipment. And right now, we have been trying to figure out the best way to try and provide that directly. One of the best ways we can do that right now through the channel is through, I'm trying to think. Really, it's Revive Soldiers of Ukraine at this point, because, you know, it is largely our best, but really we're still trying to find out the best way to get that over. And actually, interesting enough, in case if everyone wanted to know, BC Skyman actually came up with an idea because they actually help out with getting that kind of equipment, medical equipment over to Ukraine, if we would be willing to fundraise for those kinds of absorbent film wound dressings. The thing is, though, is that we can't do it through YouTube Give, and we don't really know how we would be able to set up a fundraiser and do it that way, but it is something that would be interesting to see if we could do, because BC Skyman has been around forever. And we know that BC Skyman and his contacts are completely legitimate. So we've been trying to maybe move in the direction of maybe doing a one-off fundraiser where we can end up helping out with those absorbent film wound dressings. It's just that we have to try and figure out a way to be able to do that and also show receipts and really show the entire process from beginning to end, which is a part that's a little bit tricky in the background, but we've been trying to figure that out in the background. So we'll be seeing if that is something possible, but great to hear, BC Skyman, that the LSA flag will be presented as a part of that shipment, and it's great to know that the Lee Spring Army will be over there in spirit in that way. And I would have to say that that would be a great thing to know, that that would be donated on the part of the Lee Spring Army, and hopefully we can hopefully we can have a way to help out with that in the future through the Lee Spring Army, because wouldn't that be cool if we could help out on a medical end? One thing I do have to say, though, is that no matter what, because a lot of people here always want to fundraise for body armor and things like that, there is a little bit of a difference in between fundraising for medical equipment or humanitarian aid, is how it can be described, and then doing stuff that would be considered military equipment like body armor or ammunition or anything like that. Doing that usually violates the guidelines and the terms of service of many different platforms, including YouTube. And so if you do that, you run the risk of having people filing legitimate complaints against your channel and having it obliterated off of the face of the earth. That has apparently happened to some people as far as their Patreon goes and things like that. And we generally want to be here to cover the news tomorrow, so we probably would never be able to fundraise for body armor or helmets. But we could try and do this thing with BC Skyman, getting the wound dressings over to Ukraine. That would be really interesting. But we will, let's see. And also, really quickly, I actually just got an update from Matthew, because Matthew was the one telling me how we could do this. Y'all could, here's how we would most likely do it at the moment. Y'all can get the bandages, the 4x11 bandages that BC Skyman just mentioned in the super chat, and y'all can send them to BC Skyman. BC Skyman will collect all of the bandages, and then all of the bandages will be sent to Ukraine. So that is probably the best way that we can do that right now. So hopefully that gets that kind of rolling for now. Because
and also by the way, another issue that sort of causes some cumbersome issues with this whole idea that we're having here, because we want to help BC Skyman out. That's one thing we've been actually talking to BC for some time about trying to get this set up. And right now, we simply don't have the means to do it because, according to my understanding, we would need to set up a nonprofit, 501c nonprofit, to be able to process donations and then buy the medical aid with it. And that's for tax purposes. We'd have to do that. Otherwise, we'd have to pay taxes on the money and all that good stuff, which can get very bad for us when it comes to a financial aspect. So we have to set up that nonprofit. But like the enforcer said, one thing that BC is willing to do right now is he will accept the actual medical aid himself, those Leukomed pads that he mentioned. I'm sure if you reach out to BC, he'll give you all the details about which ones are needed. And also, I'm not sure if BC is totally prepared for the amount of volume this is probably going to generate or not, but I'm sure a lot of people are going to be sending him these medical pads right here. But if you do want to send them, though, Yuri is going, like BC's been telling us. He's going to Ukraine, and he's going to present the forces with the LSA flag, which we sent to BC Skyman as well, which is an extra flag to send to the soldiers, and they're going to be taking these medical supplies with them as well. And I don't think BC is going this time, because I think BC went last time. I'm not sure if the wife will let him go again, but Yuri is definitely going. So it's a very good cause, and I wish we could help out more directly than this, because this feels like somewhat of a sidewinder way to do it. But sadly, we need time to be able to set up that nonprofit if we're going to do that. And I really don't know what's involved with that either. It could be a lot of paperwork, and we'd have to do our research.
And also, that's another interesting thing, is I don't think anyone else who's done anything like this has set up a 501 nonprofit out there ever. So, you know, that's a little interesting when you think about it. But, you know, it is what it is. But we're going to be trying to do it a legitimate way. So we would actually have to create an enforcer nonprofit and then work it that way. So that way everything would be legitimate and also for tax purposes. And that's kind of the interesting thing about how some other people have been doing it. Just to point something out now that Matthew has brought it up on air, is that a lot of people say, give me the money. A lot of Americans have said, give me the money, and then I'll send it forward to Ukraine. But if they're filing their taxes correctly, they have to report that as income. That isn't something that they can say was a nonprofit thing, because they received the money and then they sent it forward, and they're not a 501 nonprofit and they're not operating through one. So, you know, that starts to beg the question, is all of that money going to Ukraine, or is some of that being held back for taxes, or are they holding some back for taxes and then some on top of that to pay themselves for the inconvenience of having to file all of that extra stuff and their tax returns? That is something that is a little interesting, but nevertheless, we will make sure to set up our own nonprofit and try and get moving forward on that, because that would also be something a little bit better. Because I'll be entirely honest with y'all. I'll say this. We have noticed that over the past 2 years, the amount of people who support Sunday night fundraisers has been decreasing. And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. I'm just saying it's something we've noticed. And the thing is that I feel like it may be decreasing because while we've done a massive amount to help out nonprofits that are working in Ukraine in one form or another, like Doctors Without Borders, which is helping out in Ukraine, and Revive Soldiers of Ukraine, and Razom, and all of them, you don't really get to see it on this channel because, you know, I mean, they're nonprofits. The money is sent forward from YouTube to the nonprofit, and then there isn't really a lot of involvement in the Lee Spring Army rather than providing the cash. We don't really get to see the end result of anything. And that's why, going forward, we would actually like to be able to run a nonprofit on this channel, well, at least run a nonprofit on the side and then run this channel and then divert everything to the nonprofit, so that way then we could send everything forward to Ukraine or to Taiwan or anywhere around the world. We could actually figure out how to kind of work the nonprofit, what we would provide and where it would go around the world, helping out Western causes. It would make sure that the Lee Spring Army is actually able to measure and control our impact around the world and where it goes and what it does. And so I think that would be a pretty interesting idea, in my honest opinion. And also on top of that, some other times, you know, every once in a while, we find out something about a nonprofit that, yeah, you know, that we don't really like. Like with, for example, Doctors Without Borders, we found out that they actually support the Palestinians in the Israel conflict, and we know that that medical support usually ends up in the hands of Hamas because they run the strip and everything else. So we ended up axing them, and that's why we haven't run a Doctors Without Borders fundraiser in forever, is for that reason, back on October 7th. And there's a whole bunch of other things like that. We would actually be able to control what the Lee Spring Army does, or the nonprofit and its official statements and all that stuff. And we'd be able to make sure that it also remains non-political, which a lot of nonprofits have a really hard time doing, much like YouTube channels. They like to delve into politics. So while we support nonprofits, sometimes on some of them, if you look below the surface, there is a large political leaning that they have in one direction or the other. And I'm not really a big fan of that either. So hopefully we'll be able to do something like that in the future. That would be incredibly cool. But right now it's kind of in the works and in the background. We don't really know how much will go into that. But it still would be interesting to see. But with that, thank you so much for the massive amount of support, BC Skyman, and helping this channel keep on running. Thank you for bringing that up so that way we could try and shout it out and send some folks that way. And hopefully the Lee Spring Army will be able to send its regards in medical bandages, life-saving material to help out Ukrainian soldiers to survive another day, or at least to survive until Revive Soldiers of Ukraine or another nonprofit like that can get a hold of them and help them out. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And also, BC, by the way, I'm not sure if you set up a separate email to be able to accept people's contact requests or not. I would not recommend sending in your personal address because you're going to have people harassing you nonstop, because there are sickos out there that would do that to try to disrupt it. And if you would see what we're talking about if you try that.
Yeah.
So if you haven't, set up a separate email and let us know what that email address is, and we can shout it out here for people to contact you. Or if there's another way you want to be contacted, we could do that. And also, just to clarify, folks, BC is asking only for the medical supplies, because even though BC is just an individual, I'm not a tax expert or anything like that, but I believe he would also be basically required to set up a nonprofit if he were to accept financial donations. So he's just looking for the medical equipment and the aid, so that way he can actually just send it to Ukraine with Yuri. Just to make that clear, he wanted me to clarify that real quick. But it looks like BC is setting up, he actually set up a separate email. So BC, if you'd like to email that to me at my email that you've been communicating with, or over Discord, we can shout that out if the enforcer's fine with it.
Oh yeah, I'll be fine with that 100%.
All right, so with that, we are moving on to our next super chat, which goes to Mark, the Kinetic Possum, who has made a triumphant return once again. Mark, it's good to see you once again, and he throws in a $100 donation, and thank you very much, Mark, for that support. He said a hit and run donation.
It's a hit and run! Matthew, you're gonna be the new Don, Matthew. When I'm calling you, you're gonna run this place. All right?
But Tony, I can't run the place, Tony. I can't do it.
You gotta pull yourself up by the bootstraps and do it, Tony. But beyond that, thank you so much for the massive support, Mark the Kinetic Possum. Thank you for the hit and run super chat and helping this channel to keep on running. folks like you help to make this thing possible and help us to keep the wheels turning and the fires burning in the background of this channel. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to make it possible to keep this thing running. And so massive thanks to you, Mark, the Kinetic Possum. And thank you so much once again for having been around with this channel a very long time. And of course, supporting it and helping it to keep running too. And so with that, thank you. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Johan Eckervad, who puts in a $45 donation. And I believe that is Johan's first ever super chat of the stream. So a huge shout out to you, Johan, for that very generous support. He says, my last day is a high-risk security specialist at Swedish television. And I've listened to the channel and used the maps for the past year and keep going. And I'll tell you what, he's an old guard and also a high-risk security specialist at the TV, Swedish TV. That's very interesting. I wonder what that job entailed. It sounds very exciting, actually. I'd be curious to hear about that job. But Enforcer, what say you?
Swedish television broadcasting company. I've actually never looked into this specifically, but this is the company he's talking about. Swedish Television, right here, SVT. And here is the major broadcasting antenna and radio for SVT. That is probably the most brutalist looking radio tower I have ever seen in my life. Like, that thing is actually pretty wild looking. It looks like a fortress, really. A great defensive structure, maybe. But still, let's see. Here is the SVT headquarters in Stockholm. Pretty cool, pretty cool. What else do we have? We have a reporter from SVT right here with a camera and everything. What else do we have? Let's see here. What else do we have about this company? The regional studio in Malmo. That looks like an old industrial warehouse. And then we have the regional studio in Gothenburg, which is probably the drippiest of them all. I like this one. But still, really cool to hear that it's your final day as a high-risk security specialist at Swedish Television. Incredibly cool. And I gotta say, thank you so much for having watched this channel for an incredibly long time, over a year. And thank you so much for wanting us to keep it going. We will be making sure to keep this thing going. Hell or high water, this thing will continue on even after the war is over. We'll continue to cover major breaking news from around the world, conflicts that are going on. We may even start branching out and covering things from inside of the United States in an apolitical form, and things around the world as well, interesting stories. We would love to do something like that. And folks like you really give us the encouragement to know that what we're doing is incredibly good, and then we should continue to try and go upwards and onwards from here, and continue to try and run this as a news channel. I can't thank you enough, Johan, for the massive support and helping this channel to keep on rolling, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't have been able to be here right now. We wouldn't have had the encouragement, the interesting and amazing people who make up the Lee Spring Army to really be behind us and backing us the whole way as we keep on sharing the news with all of y'all. And so, thank you so much once again, Johan. And also, really cool to hear that you enjoy this channel while you've been working for a television channel that is a news channel in Sweden. That is incredibly cool. And I gotta say, really neat. And so with that, thank you so much once again for your support. I hope that does address that well. And also, let's see here. Someone said, do you see this, Matthew? Do you see this? I think if I'm getting the context correctly, before we move on to the next one, someone just said, get off the fence. And, oh my goodness, that's crazy. Get off the fence. You know something, Shadow Bandit, that's something for you to do. I'm a news reporter, and you see, back in the day, back before news stopped being news, news was about giving the public, like you, a story. And then you hopped off the fence, and you went on one side or the other. But the news isn't supposed to pick a side. The news is naturally supposed to ride the fence. Because to not ride the fence and to pick one side or the other, that is called a political pundit, and that is not what news is. If you want to hear a political spin, there are massive channels out there, like Fox News and CNN here in the United States, that do not ride the fence. They pick purely hard left or hard right. You can pick one of those, but here on this channel, we're going to ride the fence until the end of time, because that's what news is supposed to be. We're not supposed to tell y'all what your political opinion should be. We're supposed to just tell y'all the news, and y'all get on about your day. And we shouldn't know what y'all's political opinions are, and y'all shouldn't know what our political opinions are. That's how news works. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and we are on to the next one.
And also, by the way, you might have seen the announcement tab go up. It says BC Skyman is requesting donations of BSN Leukomed T Plus absorbent film wound dressings in size 4-inch by 11-inch to deliver to the soldiers in Ukraine. And you can contact him at B1Skyman67 at AOL.com. So if you have any questions about where to send it and things like that, BC has all those questions answered for you over his email, and you can feel free to send him an email. And BC, truly a big thanks to you for doing this, by the way. This is also a very generous thing for you to do. It's going to take up a lot of time, and I think you're going to be shocked by the amount of requests you get on email to send you these medical pads as well. So huge shout out to BC for doing this, because he's taking time out of his day, and he does work a full-time job, so he's taking time out of his day to do this. And huge shout out to BC for being generous with his time and also working with Yuri to send this aid to Ukraine. We do seriously appreciate it as well. And it's this type of efforts right here which make a really big difference to the soldiers in Ukraine. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say a huge shout out to BC Skyman as well, who is a channel legend and an old guard through and through. It's truly incredible to always have him here, and not only that, to be able to help out with something like this. This kind of support, which we have put as a pinned comment up in the live chat, so y'all should be able to see that right now, is going to help BC Skyman out massively to get this medical aid to Yuri. Yuri will bring this over to Ukraine, and then this medical aid will be disseminated amongst the troops to help out in situations where soldiers get injured and require this kind of a wound dressing. This is going to be huge. This could help out a lot of people, and hopefully y'all can all contact BC Skyman at the email in the pinned comment. It is B1Skyman67 at AOL.com. Reach out to him there, and of course, he'll most likely give you the mailing information and everything else needed, and you'll be able to send the bandages that y'all will buy to BC Skyman so he can collect them all in one place and then send them forward with Yuri into Ukraine. Hopefully, by the time Yuri goes over there here in a little bit, he will have enough bandages that the flag will be able to not even wrap around the bulk of the bandages that we will send. So hopefully that will be the case. We may even throw in some of our own as well. I may even find some and try and throw some in if we can. And so with that, thank you so much once again for doing that, BC Skyman. That is a huge thing, a massive effort, and you're truly one of the folks who is doing a massive impact and helping out greatly in Ukraine with these kinds of grassroots efforts for the large part. And hopefully we'll be able to see that the Lee Spring Army is able to have a physical impact that we'll be able to report on this channel proudly that you were a major part of. In fact, really the leader of this entire thing. And so with that, thank you so much once again, BC Skyman, for being a legend and having a heart of pure gold. And best of luck on this venture. And I hope the Lee Spring Army is able to run forward the guns and send more bandages than anyone can even fly over to Ukraine. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat is going to go to Andy L, who puts in a $20 donation. And huge shout out to you, Andy, for that support once again as well. He says, I had tornadoes south of me yesterday, tornadoes north of me tonight, and supposedly tornadoes here early in the morning. It's going to be a long night, he says, and just a normal Texas spring, and long live the LSA. And Andy, be safe out there with those tornadoes, because I saw on Twitter a second ago, there's a huge tornado going through somewhere right now. I'm not really sure where it was, but it seems like Texas and also Oklahoma is getting hit hard with those tornadoes here recently. So hopefully you're staying safe out there. And I really didn't know Texas was that big with tornadoes like that. I really didn't know that. And that sort of changed my perspective of it just a little bit when it comes to potentially moving there. But be safe. But Enforcer, what say you?
And be safe, Andy L. That is concerning. We get tornadoes a bit in Alabama, but we do not get them that much. Like having tornadoes literally flying all around you like it's just the wind in the summer. That is crazy. I mean, insane actually. And I hope you stay safe out there, Andy L. That would be terrible to hear that we get casualties in the Lee Spring Army from tornadoes. So you just go out there and you make sure to stay safe. Don't go out there. If there's a tornado out, don't go out. Stay inside. But that is still wild to hear, Andy L. And I hate to hear that. Best of luck to you. I hope you stay safe. And hopefully tornado season ends here sooner than it normally does. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Jenna, last name Tolls, who puts in a $20 donation. Thank you very much, Jenna, for that support. They said, please play the Jaws music.
Oh, I wish we could. I wish we could, Jenna, last name Joel's. But if we did, we would be copyrighted because that music, that score is actually owned by Universal Pictures.
Oh, the Warner Brothers. Oh no.
Oh God. Wait a minute, it's Universal, right? Or is it Warner Brothers who would own the copyright to that music?
I think for some reason I'm thinking Warner Brothers, but I don't know if Warner Brothers is part of Universal or something like that. But I don't know why in my head I'm thinking Warner.
So let's see here. Let me see what studio made this. Directed. Okay, well, it doesn't matter who's directed by. Let's see here. Let's see here. Dang, they don't actually have it on the main poster for the movie? Are you kidding me? Ridiculous. Let's see here. We gotta see something about the okay, so they went to Universal Pictures, and Universal is a division of Universal Studios, which is owned by NBC Universal, a division of Comcast. So I believe that Comcast would be the one that actually holds the copyright going off of that.
You can watch the Peter McNeely fight on Comcast television.
Oh, man, dude, I was seeing that when I said Comcast. I was like, I'm just going to keep a straight face, and then you immediately went straight to Mike Tyson. I was like, damn. I was like, man, it's fight night in Japan or something like that. But beyond that, what's actually really interesting about copyright is that if we do not have a license for it, Jenna, we can't play it. And we scared to play it. Because they're going to come down on the private jet with their attorneys, and they're not even going to sue us for copyright infringement. They're just going to punch us in the mouth with their papers that say that they own the copyright. And so we're scared. We're actually terrified of copyright. And some people out there, they've always laughed at that, Matthew. You know, us being scared of copyright, going, "Oh man, look at them. They're so stupid. YouTube is a copyright-free world." Until DJ Vlad came down on them and put that lowest suplex on their spine. Ooh,
man,
DJ
Vlad,
$5,000.
I don't know about that, but DJ Vlad's a player. I'm telling you what, he ain't playing any games with him. Man. Honestly, I don't blame him. I wasn't playing any games with him either.
Man, DJ Vlad, he became Vlad the Impaler. He went blah 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 blah. He went, "I'm gonna get you, blah blah," and I was like, "Oh!" I was like, "Get him!" But beyond that, thank you so much for the support, Jenna. I would play that if it wasn't for copyright. But thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that explains why we can't play it, because we would get in trouble. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Tom Axman, who puts in a $20 donation. And huge shout out to you, Tom, for that support as well. He says, "Which reminds me, can you put this in tomorrow's fundraiser since YouTube doesn't work?"
Yes, we can. I hate to hear that YouTube isn't working anymore with that. I'll be quite honest with y'all. I kind of have a little bit of a running theory, Tom Axman. I'll add a 20 to my 100 tomorrow, so it'll be 120. I'm having a feeling that system might not be working because the Lee Spring Army has fundraised so much through the system, they never expected that anyone would use it as a kind of like a full-time thing. I don't know. But beyond that, I will make sure to throw that in and get that on going somewhere. And so with that, thank you so much once again for the support and helping this channel to keep on running, because folks like you help to make it possible. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Ari Sawini, who puts in a $10 donation. And huge shout out to you, Ari, for that support as well. And they said, "Cope cages are becoming common with Ruski vehicles, even oil refineries, and will we see these Hope cages soon on golf carts and infantry helmets, lol." And Ari, it's funny. We saw that little bad boy on the golf cart tonight, actually. He thought it was coming down the road, but it just happened tonight. They're getting worse by the day pretty damn quick. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I would have to say that it is pretty wild. It's pretty wild that you brought that up, because we actually did just see them putting a cope cage on a go-kart, and they may even put cope cages on the helmets. I'm not doubting that at this point. I think they're putting them everywhere. Like, they're like that people, there's people mad that you have the sauce brand where they're like, "I put that on everything." You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah, that sauce.
That sauce. I forgot the name of that sauce. But beyond that, I hope that does address that well. Ari Sweeney, Kiwi Wife and Finn, by the way. Because
Frank's
they are...
Red Hot.
I think that is Red Hot, yeah. But they are going to be putting that on everything at some point. Helmets might be a bit of a stretch, but they're already putting it on go-karts, so it's not that big of a stretch. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that the best I can, and we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Jenna, last name Tolls, once again, who puts in a $10 donation and says, "Can we just start calling Russians hot dogs? And if they're referred to as hot dogs, What's the country name?
Oh, good question. I wouldn't want to call them hot dogs because while the Russian army is brutal and terrible, I still feel like hot dog is just too big of an insult. Because to say that they're hot dogs would be to say that they're completely incompetent, and they're wildly incompetent, but they're not completely incompetent because they have been able to somehow stick in the war for 2 years. Being completely incompetent would be doing YouTube as your full-time job and then not running a stream for a week just because you didn't feel like it, or something along those lines. That kind of incompetence, I don't even think the Russians stoop down to that level. Or better yet, attacking their own audience. Very rarely do the Russians do that. They usually try and to befriend people when it even isn't in their best interest. So I would have to say that if they were to become the hot dogs, which I think that would be stooping too low, we would be hitting below the belt on the Russians to call them the hot dogs. But if we did, I would say that the country would be called Russian National.
Russian National?
Ruski National. Yeah, Ruski National. That's what I call it.
Call it, let's see. I was going to do a spoof on Oscar Mayer Wiener, but I was trying to think, how do I make that work? You got to change Oscar to Ivan Meyer Wiener.
That's my IP. How dare you? Aw, man. Trying to use my Oscar Mayer Wiener IP. Aw, man. Pick another.
Man, if he works hard enough, he might make his way up to the Oscar Mayer Wiener truck. He may be the driver. He has some truck driving experience, so he might get to drive the truck. Although he's got to work his way up to that, though. I mean, don't just get that right off the bat. You keep working hard now, and you might get that.
Aw, man, maybe one day I'll be able to get that impounded too. Aw, man.
Can you imagine him getting arrested out of the Oscar Mayer Wiener truck and then them hauling it off on a tow truck? He's like, no, come back. No, I finally made it to the Wiener truck. Come back.
I literally made it to platinum. Bring it back. To bring it back.
Oh my God, it's like life's throwing stuff in my face.
Aw, man, and I'm gonna complain to it about all y'all like I'm the real life version of George Costanza. Aw, man.
What is this? What is this?
Yeah, I'm an eggplant! I'm an eggplant!
Look! The plants are yellow! Do you see? The plants are yellow!
The plants are... I can't even do his voice, man. Like, I as soon as I started that first word, I was like, nah.
Do you say it? I said, do you see it? The TVs are on!
Dude, that actually sounds a lot like him. Like, it's not as close as the first time you did it, but it's closer than the second time you did it. Like, it's...
Are you kidding me? I'm looking out the window! I see trees!
Man, we're going crazy.
It's a desert!
You live in a desert! Nothing grows here! Come here! Look, it's sand! You know what grows in sand? But anyways,
that was unhinged.
That guy was unhinged. I think his name was like Sam Kennison or something. It was Sam Kennison. I'm just playing around with the last name. Yeah, I was playing around with the last name. It was Sam Kennison. But that guy was unhinged. He was wild. Crazily enough, Matty, did you know that he was actually a preacher before he became a comedian?
That's interesting. He turned kind of foul-mouthed to have been a preacher.
Well, they say it all changed after he got in a car crash. They said his entire personality changed after that car crash because he got some kind of a brain injury. And because of brain injuries, you can actually pretty much lose your entire personality and get a brand new one because your brain gets a little jumbled in the injury. So I was like, that's wild. So he was not like that before. And then after he got the brain injury, he actually ended up divorcing his wife, leaving his kids, and then becoming a comedian and doing that. And it's like, that's one hell of a switch. I believe that's how the story went, at least. But anyways,
that's crazy.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it really is. And also, let's see here. Let's see here. Hang on. Let's see. I'm trying to see anyone in the chat who's setting. No, I'm not seeing it. For some reason, I thought there was somebody in the chat and I wanted to address it. I couldn't find it again. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you for the support. We are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Hardwater Channel, who puts in a 10 and says, Leaf Spring Intelligent Core, Enforcer Livestream Rewatch Binge at episode 46, seeing how many I can cram in before my LSA mug arrives.
Hey, and I love to hear it. Keep cramming them in. We love to hear it. And I can't wait for you to watch them all, because you'll really watch us evolve over the years. We started off really unpolished, uncouthed even, and now we're polished and still uncouth. But I gotta say, thank you so much for the incredible support and the kind words as well. And I hope that you get to see them all before the Lee Spring Army mug arrives hard water. And also, thank you for your third support to this channel ever in helping this thing to keep on rolling. And with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And we are on to the next one.
In our next one goes to Made in Canada 182, who puts in a $10 donation. And they said, ever since someone said the LSA Eagle has a pair, I can't unsee it, lol. My 12-hour shift last night felt like a 24-hour shift without the enforcers. Oh, man. And he says, LLT, LSA, and take one from the live chat. I'll tell you what, Made in Canada, also, first off, thank you for the support. But real quick, Enforcer, I will say that last night felt extremely long for me. Like, I sat there on Twitter, tweedledee on Twitter, and then finally I was like, oh my god, it's really going down. Like, it started going down like an hour into the stream normal runtime last night. Everything started happening at like a rapid speed, and I was like, damn. Like, it actually turned out to be an eventful night. I was just sitting there on Twitter just retweeting, thinking, damn, we could have been streaming, but there wasn't enough news to cover the beginning of it to warrant a stream running. But it felt like a long night for me too. But Enforcer, what say you?
And I gotta say, I hate to hear that, Made in Canada. We will make sure to do our best efforts to keep running streams, even if we have to go to Ukraine and make the news ourselves. We will make sure to try and find a way to keep these streams running. But to be entirely honest and to not kid around, we hate not running streams like a lot. But the thing is that last night, we had a very small amount of news. I had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. I had 14 news segments, and usually we have 25 to 30, and that's usually a lower number. Usually it gets up to around 33. And with that small amount of news, we would maybe be able to do a news segment for maybe 40 or 50 minutes, including a question segment in between. It might stretch to be an hour and 10 minutes. And then we would be immediately going into a question segment by that point, almost an entire hour ahead of when we normally would. And the thing is that I want to make sure that when we report news, that we have news to cover. And there wasn't even anything out of all of these, out of these 14 clips here, there wasn't even really anything that I found that was exceptional enough to make an entire news stream off of. Most of it was just Russian vehicles getting hit, things getting blown up, you know, the same old, but it wasn't anything that was like big news that y'all might need to hear, like a refinery getting hit like today. So when I saw all that, and I had gone around everywhere looking for news, I went, you know what, there's just not enough. We're going to have to cancel the day and wait for tomorrow, and then just cover the next 48 hours as one stream. And so that's why we did it. It's more of a thing of quality, because when we get on, I want to make sure that we actually have news, like 2 hours of news or an hour and 40 minutes, not including any question segment or anything like that, because if we don't, I feel like I'm kind of cheaping out on news. And then on top of that, it really just becomes a massive stream that's a question segment, where we just try and answer super chats and live chats and stuff after that. And even then, that can't last that long either. And so I hope that does address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again for the support and help with this channel to keep it running. I hate, though, that it was such a long night last night, but hopefully we will not have to worry about that again in the future. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Da Basti, who puts in a $10 donation. And thank you very much for that flag, or not for the flag, but for the donation. I saw flag in the super chat, and I started saying flag. But they said, hello there, and yesterday I finally received the LSA flag, and there's the word flag, after €20 custom tax on top. Oh, damn, I hate to hear that. The custom taxes, they're killing me, I'm telling you what. They said, but now there's a flag in the Bavarian Alps. And if you like, check it out at Guernsey, Bavaria. And greetings.
And greetings to you, Dabasti. And thank you so much for the support. And thank you for having a Lee Spring Army flag flying in literally the most southern area of Bavaria. South of Munich.
We got a flag flying there now? What, are you kidding?
Man, we got a flag flying around there. Hit the Seinfeld. Are you kidding?
Are you kidding me? A flag in Bavaria? What? And that sounds like Mickey Mouse.
Why? What do you know Oh no, the copyright attorneys are coming. You don't know the IP. I don't hurt me. But anyways, what do we got here? We got Rotok. I don't know how to pronounce the town names. I'm so sorry about that. I actually feel kind of like a douche. But let's... Oh, blurred out. Oh, look at this! Wow. This reeks of Germany. Like this is a very German building to me. Very nice. Wow, dude. This is nice. This is a nice place.
I like it. Everybody's riding around on bicycles. It looks nice and safe.
Can we go down that street?
It looks very nice.
Go down the street. There we go. Now we're back on the street. And we're on the side of the street now. Wow, this place is beautiful, actually. What a nice place. And we got the Wahlberg Apothecary, I believe. If I'm reading that correct. I would assume it's an apothecary, because that looks like a apothecary. Yeah, apothecary, but, in English, an apothecary. That's what I'm assuming. Like I'm trying to use my English skills here, because I hardly have those. But, wow, look at this.
Y'all know something, by the way? Since he mentioned the custom taxes, I'll tell y'all something. The way we did the store, and it's still like this right now, just to make it clear, I don't want to get anything mixed up. The customs fees, if there are any, are taken care of by the customer, the person buying it. So whoever gets a flag or got one was responsible for the fees. But in the future, I'm hoping to have it set up to where we can collect that up front, so that way it makes it easier for everyone in the future if they're going to buy something off the merch store. The only reason we haven't done that just yet is because it's super complicated to know all the different countries we're shipping to, because we literally ship to pretty much everywhere, which is super complex when it comes to customs and taxes, more so than you would think. Like, I'm shocked how complicated that really is. But we're hoping to be able to maybe, find a way to get the customs lowered somehow by classifying the item as still accurately, want to make that clear as well, but classify it in a different way to try to get the customs down. Trying to figure that out as well, if there even is a way to do that. But that's something we're working on in the future as well. So also we're hoping to get international shipping down as well. I think I found a way to get it down even further by using DHL. But we'll have to see. I don't know if that'll be the best thing in the world, but we'll have to see. But cost is obviously a big component of the whole situation. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'm not gonna lie. If we're using DHL, we may as well expect to, half of them may or may not make it. Some of you may go missing, but that's a sacrifice we're willing to make. I mean, I don't know. We'll have to see. We'll have to see on that one. But beyond that, also Octavian Timurosanu said, I want to get a flag, but the custom fees are a slap in the face. No, some of the countries have outrageous custom fees. Like, for example, a lot of the Baltic states, from our research, had such insane customs fees. If y'all are from the Baltics and you got a flag, God bless you, because you probably paid more, 3 times more in customs fees than y'all did for the flag. So thank you to anyone from the Baltics who went through with getting one, because the fees were insane. We wish that it was a lot easier to send stuff around the world, but the reality is that we sadly can't control the customs fees. That was tough. But beyond that,
y'all know how many packages have been lost, though, the flag by USPS? It's ridiculous. I've already, sent out, a total of 4 or 5 replacement flags because they were lost in the mail. And we only have a limited number of replacement flags on hand. So we're hoping we don't just run out of replacement flags by the time all the lost packages end up getting sorted out. Because I saw another one come in during the stream. I was thinking, oh my God, are you kidding me? USPS is losing these packages all over the place. So far, we hadn't had an international package go missing, because that would be a disaster with the cost of shipping. But whatever the case is, we'll just have to figure it out. But hopefully in the future, we can get a more reliable carrier. I'm not sure if DHL's answer to that, but maybe a more reliable one. The catch is, though, I'll just tell y'all this, not that y'all want to know all the details and specifics about the merch store, but the trick with the merch store is trying to balance reliability with the shipping and also ease of checkout and things like that for tax reasons and all that stuff, with also trying to keep costs low. And that is a huge challenge to try to do that, because USPS is pretty cheap when it comes to shipping, one of the cheapest carriers out there, but the reliability, in my opinion, is not that good. But there's really not too many other options. It's just, I don't know. It's a tough one. I'm going to put a lot of thought into it, though, and try to fix it.
And so with that, I hope that does address
Did
that.
you hear that, Enforcer? Did you hear all that?
I did. I heard it all. But with that, we wanted to make sure to get back to Da Basti's super chat and talk about Tegernsee or Tegernsee in Germany, which looks gorgeous. Look at this place. This place is schmacking. Look at it. Isn't it beautiful?
That is schmacking. I say that's very nice. I say.
Man, you know what? I sound like a wounded dog right there going, like I had to do it 3 times. I went, but anyways, this place is beautiful. And I love to know that the Lee Spring Army flag is flying somewhere out here in Tegernsee. And if it is flying out here somewhere, make sure to take it up to the top of one of those mountains and fly it up there if you can. Like, I'm not saying, like, you know, risk your life or anything to do it, but if you can get up there and fly it from there, that would be so cool to see. And so, thank you so much to Basti once again for the support, helping this channel to keep on running. And also, you live in Tegernsee because you're not bad. You're not that bad, Visa. But with that, thank you so much once again. And also, let's see here. Let me look around here. Because this is south of Munich. Do all the towns down here look like Tegernsee and Rottag-Egern or something like that? Let's go over here. Because now I'm interested, because this may be where all the older style-looking German architecture is. And lo and behold, it kind of is. So what I was thinking of was really Bavarian architecture, more so than anything. And these buildings are still modern, you can tell, because they have modern finishes and fronts on them. But still, they have the original kind of architectural style, which is really nice. I like it. I like it a lot. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. Thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And also, just going out of order for real quick, I want to address this one while I saw it. Lord Latho's LSA put in a 2 and said, absolutely no UPS, please. Lord Latho's, the only problem with that is, and I understand why you have gripes with them. I've had gripes with UPS in the past as well. But to be perfectly honest, I've had gripes with pretty much all the carriers at this point. There's basically, you're picking amongst the worst. So you pick the best of the worst ones. And in my opinion, I think UPS is one of the more reliable ones. The only catch is, though, is they're one of the most expensive ones as well, from my experience. So if we offered a UPS option for shipping internationally or also in the domestic states on the flag, the shipping cost would have most likely been about twice as expensive as it was shipping it with USPS, according to the numbers I ran on Shopify. And, you know, I'm pretty sure that that's as low as it could go. So, you know, it's just tricky. The carrier situation is nuts. But I'm not going to rabbit hole too much on that. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say, Matthew's largely the one who takes care of these shipping providers, so that is more so his ballpark than mine. But still, we'll try and pick one. But you know, like Matthew was saying, it's more about trying to get the reliability and the cost in kind of a good ballpark, because we don't want y'all to end up losing your shirts in shipping fees and also customs fees on top of that. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, and thank you so much once again for support, Lord Lathos. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Tom Exman, who puts in a $20 donation, and he says, Matt, send more bandages to BC with the super chat.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Tom Exman. And I will make sure to try and send a little bit more, but I have been looking at the cost, and they can be a little expensive, a little pricey. But we will be
bandages.
Yeah, I was looking around. Well, hang on. Let me. Am I reading these right? Let's see. Absorbent film, wound dressing, sterile. So, wait, let me check this out over here on the second screen. Oh, this is okay. Whew, thank God. It's a box of 50. I thought it was only one. Because the price for it looks like it was only one. I was like, oh my God. But it's a box of 50. So these, yeah, we can actually get a load of these over there. So I will be seeing about doing that personally, but I also want y'all to know, and I want to make this very clear, because I'm not going through this take 2 where someone tries to make a smear piece about us because they want to try and twist things. This is the only super chat, period, that I'm putting towards that. Do not start sending in super chats to me saying, here's money for the bandage fund. I'm buying them with my personal money. Personal money. No one sent anything to me saying that it's for bandages, because I'm not going to have some clown crackhead making a hit piece on us saying that I scam people out of money and all that crap, because we don't do that on this channel. I don't fundraise. This is not a nonprofit. I'm buying the bandages and sending them to BC Skyman because I want to, and I'm not going to have like 50 people send bandages, even if it's a joke, saying that this is for the bandage fund, so that some clown idiot fool can go make hit pieces on us and then have stupid other clown idiots believe them when it's not true at all. So just want to put that out there. I don't mean to sound really mean about that, but thinking about that and how people want to be nice like that, and then people try and take that and try and destroy our channel because we go, oh yeah, sure, thanks, and knowing that it's not a nonprofit, it's not a fundraiser or anything like that, and then they want to spin it like that. That makes me fairly angry even still. But thank you for the support, Tom Exman, and I will be putting that towards a box of bandages of my own. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
And also, real quick, Enforcer, I was doing some looking myself to see if I could spot them. So I was doing some looking here. Also, by the way, I've told BC in the live chat already that I'm going to be sending my own donation of those bandages right there to his address. So I think you already sent it over as well. But also, by the way, Enforcer, if you could, I've already checked this image. It has nothing sensitive in it about my details or anything like that. Go this image right here and let's ask BC and make sure that is the correct one.
And it's in the Discord. Okay. So is this the right one? It is a 4-inch by 11.8-inch box of 50 BSN Medical Leukomed T+ absorbent film wound dressings sterile. It is $122.74 for a box of 50. And if this is the correct...
We gotta find that cheaper somewhere else, by the way, as well. But if that's the correct one, let me do a quick search here and see if it's cheaper elsewhere, because that seems rather pricey, and Amazon's usually a little higher than everyone else.
It might be a little bit pricey. Maybe, possibly so. But we will see. If this is the one, it's actually $2.45 per bandage in the pack. So if we can get the pricing down on that a little bit, and Matthew will be on top of that and see. Matthew will probably send some of his own, and I'm also going to send some of my own as well. So hopefully you can get a really large bulk of them just from the two of us alone and send that over with Yuri, because that would be really cool. And BC Skyman said that that's it. These are the bandages. And let's see, BC Skyman said, wish I could find it cheaper. We'll see if we can. If we can, that'll be great. But
damn. Let's see. I was looking here on a medical website that looks like they sell to regular consumers like us. It's the same product, a box of 50, for $172.
Dang.
So it actually might be cheaper on Amazon now that I'm looking at it, which is very rare. But I'm going to do some shopping around and see if I can find it cheaper as well somewhere else, because we have been looking at some things. If you're on our Patreon, by the way, you'll see that we are looking into maybe making custom IFAK kits, first aid kits for our merch store in the future. I've actually been negotiating with one of the largest paramedic supply companies in the country in the background to try to get some supplies to go in these kits, and they're able to get the price down significantly to put these kits together, so that way we don't end up having to price the kits at a crazy price. So I'm wondering if maybe I could do the same thing with this and get a much larger quantity to send to BC.
And hopefully we might be able to. That might be possible. But with that, I hope we were able to address that fairly well. And thank you so much once again, BC Skyman, for clarifying that for us. So that way we have a pretty good running record of how many we might be able to send. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to AMX10 Speedy Bang Bang, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, AMX10, for that support. He said, I went to the doctor with a humming noise in my ear, and the doctor said, don't worry, that's just the wonderful sound of Russians seething.
Thank you so much for the support. AMX10 Speedy Bank Matthew Blue Flam 777's dad jokes are becoming contagious. They're starting to spread. Like, people are starting to do more of them. That's a pretty good one, I gotta say. And we always have a constant buzzing in our ears, and it's always going something like that. But still, thank you so much.
Man.
Aw, man. I'm going to sit over here and grift for an apartment I can't afford. Aw, man. No more vacations to Ukraine for me. Aw, man. But anyways, thank you so much for the support. Thank you for throwing in a good joke. I respect the joke, and I respect the grind. And thank you once again for making this channel possible and helping us to keep it running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Carrie Ann LSA, who puts in a $5 donation and says, as always, appreciate all the hard work and effort, and long live the LSA. And also, shout out to Nick, by the way, and also, I love seeing the picture. I haven't had the chance to show it to the Enforcer just yet, but I love seeing the picture of y'all holding the flag, by the way, and that was really cool to see. But Enforcer, what say you?
Hey, and thank you so much for the support, Nick. Still thinking LSA, and thank you for the support, and thank you for showing that picture to Matthew. I haven't seen it yet, but I will see it eventually, and I will be happy to see it. I'll love to see it, as a matter of fact. And thank you so much once again for being a part of this LSA, helping us to keep this thing rolling, and also always having kind words to throw in, because it means a lot to us and does make it possible for us to keep this thing going. And so with that, thank you once again, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to Thomas Kruger, who puts in a 5 and says, yakety yak, Orlan won't come back. Streaming gold.
And thank you for the support. Thank you for liking that. It was something that I came up with on the spot, and I was like, that's like that old school news pun stuff where that guy's like, Max, I don't know who you are. I don't know where you are, but maybe you should start changing your ways. Or maybe changing your names. It's like,
man.
That guy, Matt, you remember him?
Man. It was I guess you could say it was cold, but it was a little bit cringy, I'm not gonna lie.
Really?
Yeah, a little bit.
No way. Man, that's crazy. I thought it was good. I thought it was real good. But still, thank you for the support and help this channel to keep on running, because that one I came up with on the spot. And so with that, I hope that does address that well, and we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Philip Fix's LSA, who puts in a $5 donation as well and says, Tank of the Future is a battlefield CIC equipped to control the many drones around it and heavily armored with area denial systems. And dystopia, here we come.
It's not no dystopia. Everyone always says it's a dystopia. People will be more than happy to live in that world. They'll think it's great. They'll think it's cool even. And I gotta thank you for the support and throwing that in. That's possibly a way that the tank could evolve, because who knows what it'll really look like. Because the world is the oyster. But with that, I hope that does address that well. Thank you so much once again for support and helping this channel to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and the next one goes to GunFox61, who puts in a $5 donation. And thank you very much, GunFox, for the support. He says, Enforcer, look up a salt bomb. He said, those are those type of exploding things that make regular tactical nuke look tame.
And let's see here. The salt bomb. Salted bomb. Huh. Oh, let's see here. What do we have on the salt bomb? Or a salted bomb? Is a nuclear weapon designed to function as a radiological weapon by producing large quantities of radioactive fallout than unsalted nuclear arms. This fallout can render a large area uninhabitable. The term is derived from both the means of their manufacture, which involves the incorporation of additional elements to the standard atomic weapon, and from the expression to salt the earth, meaning to render an area uninhabitable for generations. The idea originated from Hungarian-American physicist Leo Szilard, in February 1950. His intent was not to purpose that such a weapon be built, but to show that nuclear weapon technology would soon reach the point where it could end human life on Earth. Isn't it always funny how people come up with the most insane things trying to prove why people shouldn't do stuff? Like how people were like, oh my god, electricity, you could get electrocuted to death. And then Thomas S. was like, nonsense. Watch, I'll make an electric chair and show you. And then, then it became a form of execution. This is like the same thing. I actually have not heard of the salted bomb before, but I have to say, if you lick this bomb, is it salty? I would assume so. But still, thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I have to say, this is a pretty wild bomb. Maybe the bomb that they used in the brand new Fallout TV series to create a dystopian wasteland for 200 years. But beyond that, thank you so much once again for your support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one goes to Colin McAminemy, who puts in a 5 and says, do you have a view on the West's handling of the Syrian conflict and how that currently frozen war will ultimately conclude, and will it be positive or negative?
Dang, the Syrian civil war is such a slow-moving war that it's really hard to say how it will end, because the Assad regime probably will. Hell, I don't even really see a future where they end up winning or the Syrian Democratic Forces end up winning. It's really going to take one of the major powers like the United States or Russia, which are backing both sides, collapsing for anything to happen inside of Syria, most likely. So I would have to say I don't see the Syrian civil war ending anytime in the future, and the Syrian civil war is kind of a product of a bygone age in the Middle East of the Arab Spring of 2012. It's really something. It's a place frozen in time because so much has happened over those 10, well, really 12 years now in the Middle East since the Arab Spring. It's pretty much over in every other country. Extremism has largely been killed off in everywhere except for northern Iraq and Yemen. And yet it still lives on in Syria. It's a really hard thing to explain. Because now that it's a forever war, that entire land is still held up in the times of the Arab Spring of 2012. So it is really hard to even extrapolate anything out of it because the world around Syria has moved on since then, but they're still stuck in really 2012, is the best way to explain it. And so with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can. I don't even know how it would end at this point. Regardless of who wins, it's going to largely be a destabilized country because of how long the war has been going on, and it would be a very fragile government that would take control, even in peacetime. And so with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can. Thank you so much once again for support and helping this thing to keep on running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our last one, the last super chat that is, goes to Donald Kunzer, who puts in a 2 and says, Pink Floyd. He said, hey, rise up.
Hey. And thank you so much for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And I like to hear that you're rising up, rising like the bread. And so with that, thank you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're about to be moving on into the super chat. Well, actually, the live chat. Sorry, we already covered the super chats. But before we do that, we are going to be answering the Morse code deciphers. And due to time constraints, we're only going to be able to answer 3 live chats. And so, Matthew, take it away.
All right, so tonight, I think the only person I saw that answered the Morse code was Mark Hodges tonight, also known as Old Scrolls. And if I missed anyone, let me know. But I think it was just Mark Hodges. Excuse me. And the Morse code says, Russia just cannot catch a break. They will be toasted over and over. Long live the LSA, Slava Ukraine, Slava LSA, and keep up the awesomeness.
And that is the sound of money. And y'all hit that dead on the nail. That was the jackpot. Y'all got the Morse code message correct. Actually, you got the Morse code message correct. And I got to congratulate you for that because for 794 days, the Morse code deciphers, or really the Signal Corps, has been here continuing to get the Morse code message correct, and you did it again tonight. So congratulations to you, and very impressive to hear that you got it dead on the nail. And I love to also hear this as well, that we just got 27,000 likes on the stream. That is unbelievable.
Hey, what?
Yeah, you put in 27,000 likes in the live chat, and he says 27,000. I was like,
damn,
damn,
100 likes.
Dude, I looked
too many zeros.
I hadn't looked at the like number in a while. So when you put 27,000, it actually made me quickly dart up and look at the likes. I was like, what? I was like, no way. But with that, I hope that does address that well. We are on to the third to last question of the night.
And this one is going to go to, let's see here, it's going to go to AF Kaplan, who says, any reports of the Kerch Bridge being attacked in Crimea today?
We did not get any reports about that today. I believe the bridge is still closed, but no attacks have happened. And so with that, I hope that does address that well. And we are on to the second to last question of the night.
And this one goes to Jesla LSA, who says, did you see the F-35 slung under a helicopter being transported to and from a carrier?
I actually did not see that video, and I'll have to try and look for that because that actually sounds really interesting. I'd like to see it. But sadly, the answer to that question right now would be no. Sadly, I have not seen that video, but I will be looking for it and trying to find it. And so with that, we are on to the second to last question of the night.
This one is a super chat, which goes to Quantum Fighter, who puts in a 50 sec. And thank you very much for that support. He says, love to the LSA, and this is for you bros. And do you think the CIA are doing active measure stuff in Russia?
Oh, certainly. The CIA is always active inside of Russia. A lot like the FSB is always active inside of America, constantly trying to subvert the minds of great patriots of this nation into thinking that the Russians have their best interests in mind. The same thing's happening in Russia too a little bit, but it seems like the CIA likes to play a little bit more low-key and build up the intelligence side of things nowadays than actively having a role in trying to subvert the Russian government. But I certainly think that they're over there right now doing something in Russia, and thank you for having a great love of the Lee Spring Army, and thank you for enjoying the stream a great deal of Quantum Fighter, because you've always been around here almost daily. And so with that, thank you so much once again, and we are now on to the final question of the night. And so, who was the lucky last person who threw in the lucky last question of the night?
And this one goes to Mark Anthony, who says, Matt and Enforcer, well, honestly, what do you think China is planning and thinking with the U.S., as in the USA being stretched thin with help in Ukraine and Israel?
They're probably not thinking a lot, because they're actually seeing that we're supporting Israel and Ukraine at the same time now, really without stopping, much like I said in the past. Because the United States is such a large powerhouse militarily, we can be in 3 different places in the world at the same time and continue to deal with each of them appropriately. So I would say that the Chinese probably aren't thinking much, but I think that Chinese ideas about the United States are certainly going to start changing, because China is shifting from an industrial economy to a service economy, a lot like we are right now. And for that reason, China's economic ties to the United States are most likely going to be decreasing here in the near future, probably within the next 2 decades. And going off of that, China's attachment to American money, or really American trade, is going to greatly decrease, meaning that they're a lot more free to make the kind of decisions they would want to make without worrying about a massive economic reprisal through the United States. And so with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can, at least with what I know at the moment and what I think is going to happen. And thank you so much once again for asking a really good question. And with that, it is time for us to round this thing out. I've got to thank everyone so much once again for watching this stream tonight. It's been absolutely incredible. At the peak, there were 7.3 thousand of y'all here. 54,000 of y'all have watched this stream before it ended. And those sound like nothing but numbers, but like I always say, we know that behind every single one of those numbers is a person. Like the folks we know in the live chat, the folks we've been able to meet in person. Incredible, amazing people with amazing and incredible backstories. Some of the kindest people we've ever met. And we can't thank each and every one of y'all enough for being here with us tonight, so that way we can share the news with all of y'all. It's a high honor and the best thing I can ever imagine doing in the world. I wouldn't want to be anywhere else rather than helping to cover the news and share these momentous historic days with each and every single one of y'all. And so with that, if you enjoyed the stream tonight and you were brand new, make sure to hit that like button, make sure to subscribe, because that makes us incredibly happy, and make sure to comment as well, because all that helps us to keep a smile on our face and keep encouraged to run this thing. Also, if you would like, go in the description to the official Enforcer store link, click on it, and get yourself a Lee Spring Army mug, because those will be rounding out their limited edition run at the end of the stream on Tuesday, so make sure to get one while you still can. But with that, thank you all so much once again for watching. Good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, and long live the Lee Spring Army. The Lee Spring Army will never die.
And good night, folks, and thank you all for another great stream once again tonight. It was a good one and a very interesting one indeed. And of course, Slava Ukraine, Heroam Slava, and go check out officialenforcerstore.com and check out those good mugs. I'm telling you what, those good mugs over there, the best mugs. No better mugs out there, I'm telling you, they're the best. But anyways, with that, we'll see you all tomorrow on the fundraiser stream at 10 p.m. Eastern, and bye-bye for now.
Yes. The Lee Spring Army sends its regards.
Русский военный корабль. Предлагаю сложить оружие и сдаться. Русский военный корабль, иди нахуй.